The man stood over the girl and really enjoyed it. It was pouring rain outside. Yuseniel asked him to wait, but the man didn't stop, saying he was very glad he found her first. Yuseniel approached Tesbalan Nazaville and asked if it was true that he had ordered the execution of the Marquise's eldest son. The man confirmed this and said that it was because he made a mistake. Yuseniel didn't understand what he did, but Tesbalan said that he proposed to her. The lady was in shock. The man did not understand how he dared to propose to his Yuseniel. Tess said that he really loved her. He laid her on the table, which made the lady feel embarrassed. Tess asked to look at him. The girl didn't understand how everything had turned out this way. The man asked her again to look at him. Yuseniel didn't understand when everything had gone wrong. An urgent patient, she was stabbed by a robber and lost a lot of blood. Everything needed to be prepared for the blood transfusion. The woman asked the gentleman to save her daughter. The girl asked her mother for forgiveness for leaving her alone. Mother is very beautiful, so that she does not close her eyes and comes to her senses, and also does not leave mother alone. The lady had that dream again. The girl noticed something was wrong with her little sister. The girl believed Yuseniel was ill. This was her younger sister, Ganyel Hardland, short, Gael. Mother and her father also began to worry, and so the master ordered the carriage to be stopped immediately. This is Duke Mylene Hardland and Madame Duchess Ciel. Yuseniel said there was no need, and she's doing fine. It was just strange to be returning to the capital after 14 years. Ganyel thought her little sister was nervous. Her father told Yuel that she was still their sweet daughter, even though she tried to act grown up. They arrived in Konga. Returning to their hometown after 14 years changed little. This is Yuseniel Hardland. At 20 years old, she is an outsider here. It's a cliched story. After dying at the hands of a robber in her past life, she opened her eyes in this world. For certain people, this might have been an obvious development, but not for her. Because the girl didn't read novels, didn't play games, and she thought it was all a dream. She was born into the family of one of the founders of the Northern Empire, Duke Hardland. Ganyel was absolutely delighted and asked if this was really their house, because it was very big. The family loves her. Mother noted that their Gael was born after they were exiled to Varan. This is the first time she's seen a Konga. The little girl said it was very different from Varan. Yuel apologized, because it was because of her that everyone was exiled to Varan. They immediately started hugging her, and Mother noted that she asked not to say that, and her sister said that she liked it there too. At first this world seemed alien to her, but now she has completely settled in here. The girl didn't like hugs, so she sent them away immediately. The mother noticed that their daughter was very cold. The girl did not understand how she could not fall in love with such nice people. And yet, even though this isn't her place, it's for her, not mom and dad. And there's a calling here for her. Yuseniel said she wanted to transfer to the Conceum Research Institute. The Conceum Research Institute is a state-run educational institution dedicated to the study of magical powers. The place is so historic that it was converted into an academy for nobles. In this place where demons and gods exist, research into magical powers may provide the key to unlocking the secrets of world travel. The girl never even expected that she would be accepted immediately. Although she published the entrance exam separately from everyone else, it seems they knew in advance that she would come. When she entered, she said she wanted to apply, but the man immediately thought that she was the Duchess of Hardland. Well, it would be nice to start learning magic soon. Suddenly, a group of girls approached her and asked if she was the Duchess of Hardland. They noted that her family was exiled during the reign of Emperor Song. Yuseniel noted that it had been a long time ago. The girls had told her to be careful, as if this reached the ears of His Highness the Crown Prince, that is, His Highness, everything could change. The girl thought for a moment and realized that their words seemed to mean that the crybaby had ascended to the throne. She remembered how he said that he loved her. It should have been a long time ago. The girl screamed and asked if she was listening to her because she had asked if she was a duchess and had remarked that she had no upbringing at all. It seemed this child was the Marquise's daughter. The girl screamed for her to answer. While their founding family was exiled, their power weakened, while the power of the Marquis grew. She is not concerned with family power struggles and has no need to show pain to anyone who is hostile to her. Yuseniel began to smile. The girl did not understand at all why she was laughing. The girl asked her if she was sure that she was really the daughter of aristocrats. Yuseniel asked how she dared to talk like that to someone she had never met before. After this, the girl noted that her family had failed to teach her etiquette. The Marquise's daughter was simply at a loss. Everyone started looking at them. She started shouting that she was Lily Xuen, not just some aristocrat. Besides, she'll soon be empress, Yuseniel asked again. Everyone started to worship. Yuseniel said that if she wanted, she could stop. She was not interested in it at all. Lily screamed and asked how she could even be close to His Highness the Crown Prince. She's just a fallen Hardland. Suddenly, the girl heard someone standing behind her. It was the Emperor, who asked again why she had fallen, and reported that an order had been given for the return of the Hardland family, but it seemed that not everyone was yet honoring the imperial decree. Everyone immediately began to greet His Highness. The Emperor ordered her to be immediately taken out and executed. Yuseniel was sure that Tess was supposed to ascend the throne, but she didn't quite understand who this person was. There are many worlds in the universe. They are all so isolated from each other that the people in them are unaware of each other's existence. And sometimes there are people who cross the boundaries of worlds. The girl was upset because she couldn't find any information about this in the books. Instead of writing about obvious things, they would be better off teaching how to move around worlds. She was 6 years old then. A boy came up to her and said that he was here. He was very sweet and said that he missed her very much. Yuseniel stood up and greeted His Highness the Crown Prince. The boy noticed that there was no one there, so she could call him by name, and proposed to marry her today. Then they could be together all the time. Yuseniel sighed. She'd already told him she didn't like him. Tess looked down. He asked her what her type was. Then the memories ended. She definitely heard that Tess had ascended the throne. First Prince of the Northern Empire, Tespaloon Nazaville. He was often sick and cried. He was her childhood friend who always followed her, so even if they had not communicated since they were 14, they did not lose this connection. She was even sincerely glad that he had ascended to the throne, but who this cold guy was completely unclear. The director jumped out of the crowd and told His Majesty that it was the young student's mistake, so he asked him to have mercy this time. She is also the youngest daughter of Marquis Yuen. The emperor took everything from the innocent Hardlands, so they promised to return it. The emperor couldn't understand how she dared to say such a thing, being a girl named Yuen. He looks like Tess, but his character couldn't have changed so much in 14 years. Besides, that black hair and cold gaze were completely contrary. Blonde hair and blue eyes are signs of imperial legitimacy. She couldn't believe that people weren't alarmed by such a change in the emperor's appearance. It was strange. Yuseniel asked His Highness for forgiveness, and asked him to pardon Lady Yuen. She noted that people had made a big mistake, but if he forgave her, people would respect him even more. If this man really is that crybaby Tess, then he listens to her, and perhaps he has completely forgotten her, because 14 years have already passed. She is Yuseniel Hardland. The emperor remarked that the Duchess has a small heart, and that it is noble to ask forgiveness for someone who insulted her family. The director nodded in agreement from behind. This expression meant that this person was Tess. The emperor ordered that Lily Xuan not be killed, but that she be sealed in the palace dungeon. He would also like to see the academy, and invited the Duchess to join him. Yuseniel, of course, was not against it, and did not understand how he had changed so much. They reached the path, and the lady was very surprised, because he did not say a word to me along the way. Yuseniel doesn't feel the magic that could have changed his appearance so much. There is no paint or contact lenses in this world, so she cannot believe that a person has changed like this. Perhaps there is magic she doesn't know about. Suddenly, the emperor turned to her and immediately rushed to hug her. The girl did not understand what was happening. The emperor said that he had made a mistake. Perhaps she was angry that he was so late. That's why she called him His Majesty and bowed her head. Tess asked her to forgive him and immediately burst into tears. He thought she had forgotten him. There were many questions she wanted to ask when she saw him. She didn't understand why her family was exiled when she was 6, and why, for 14 years, he never wrote to her. But seeing him crying again when he is alone with her, she feels weak, just like she did when she was 6 years old. She couldn't believe that this was really the child she knew. Yuseniel decided to find out what had happened to him, why he had changed his hair and eye color, and what had happened in general. The guy thought she just didn't like it, but the girl said that wasn't the issue. It doesn't look like magic. The emperor said he apologized because that's how she tastes, black hair and black eyes. She said that this is her type, even back then, as a child. Tess said that now that he was emperor, they would no longer have to be apart, and she will not have to put up with insults as before, because everything that belongs to him also belongs to her. Everything is so strange. She feels perfectly trapped. The emperor said that he loved her, and now they could be together forever. Yuseniel was nicknamed the child who doesn't cry since childhood. They thought it was creepy and strange. She never cried and constantly looked at her parents. Tess, on the other hand, was always a crybaby, a strange child who cried and felt pain whenever she saw people. The emperor was worried about the crown prince, who did not have a single friend, so he arranged a meeting between the two strange children to see if they could get along. Tess said his eyes were fine. Tess followed her everywhere. Yuseniel didn't just hate him. This child irritated her because he showed up and left under all sorts of excuses. The girl was upset because she couldn't find anything again and didn't understand if there was even a way to return home. Then Tess came to her and said that he missed her very much. He thought that something was wrong and that she seemed to be ill. The girl smiled and said that we needed to go out through the door. However, sometimes his behavior amused her. He said that if he and Yuseniel got married, then he wouldn't have to go back and forth. The little girl told him that you can only get married after 20. Back then, everything in this world seemed ignorant to her, and she dismissed it as just a childish quirk. No matter how sincere he was, she couldn't believe he'd changed just because of her words. The girl thought it was simply impossible. Tess asked her what was wrong, and assumed she was thinking about something else when she stood in front of him. He was upset. Suddenly, Yuseniel pushed him away and shouted at him to stop. She told him to calm down, because she wouldn't let him go any further. The gentleman noticed that she was still cold. Yuseniel asked if it was true that he had changed his appearance because of her. He confirmed this and said that he also changed the imperial costume to suit her taste. The girl said she liked people who looked good in black. After that, the guy asked her how she liked it now. Yusenil has no idea how it all turned out this way, or what the hell is going on. Tess told her that if she wanted, he could change everything to black, anything she wanted. The girl asked him to tell her how he changed his appearance. In response to this, the gentleman remained silent, so the lady once again asked him to answer her. He was surprised that she was interested, and said that he would tell her everything if Yusenil married him. He always behaved the way he wanted, but she doesn't understand how she can avoid it. Her family was exiled to Varan. Perhaps this influenced his appearance. Yusenil said she had had enough and was going home. The emperor asked if he could do the same, as he had often gone there before. Yusenil said he couldn't. He has a gift for her, but the lady said that she will do without it. Tess asked if she would say that even if it was a pass to visit the Imperial Library. Tess has expanded their library, and she'll find more books on magic there than in Consume. She can borrow whatever she wants, except for the forbidden areas. All this is because she liked to read books. The lady turned away again, because he began to touch her again. Tess promised to wait for her at the palace, but she had to hurry, because his patience was beginning to wear thin. After that, he disappeared, and the lady realized it must have been teleportation magic. He can use your magic. That's why the girl was so shocked. Yusenil was practicing fencing, and her opponent asked them to take a break. Her opponent was her childhood friend, Ethel Bonaparte. He noticed that the lady was overdoing it that day. Yusenil noticed that he was still weak, so he seemed to be. The gentleman thought that she was probably the only one who called the Imperial Knights weak. He believed she was too powerful due to her elven blood. She hadn't even returned to the capital before she'd already enrolled in Consume. He'd only been practicing for a few days since his founding. Yusenil assumed he'd written to her because he'd been so busy with the knights. Edel began to say that he sent her letters all the time and tried hard to write them. Yusenil noted that he had visited the Imperial Palace while she was in Varan, and so she wants to know if he thinks Tess has changed. The guy noticed that His Majesty was always with them, and it seemed that he had not changed. From that day on, she asked her father and everyone around her about Tess, but they all answered the same way. They didn't know his appearance had changed. The guy also added that he was a little scared. After His Highness ascended the throne, a bloody wind arose. That's why Atil asked his friend not to interfere in this. In fact, she also has a feeling that I shouldn't get involved in this. But she couldn't pass up the chance to learn more about magic, so she came. The emperor was glad, because finally she was here. He had been waiting for her, his Yusenil. The gentleman asked if they heard he was the youngest daughter of the Marquise of Sueng. The man heard that this happened because of the Duchess of Hardland and the fact that her family had returned to the capital. Everyone was interested in what would happen if she really became empress. Everything was as Yusenil expected. Rumors began to spread. Your empire is divided into two branches, the family of the founding duke on the emperor's side, and the marquis on the empress's side. The empress was the emperor's beloved and only wife, a descendant of the marquis family, so it was planned to appoint the marquis's daughter as crown princess. However, this rule was abolished because Tess was obsessed with Duchess Yusenil. Because of this, her family was kept under strict control, preparing her for the status of empress. And as soon as she returned, rumors began to spread that she was going to the imperial palace and that she did not want to hurt her family anymore. Times were hard enough. They were already exiled for 14 years because of her. 14 years ago, in the emperor's throne room, he was grateful to the girl for this visit. Yusenil noticed that His Majesty was in some strange state. The emperor said that he called her because he wanted to ask her something, so he asked her to answer honestly. He needs to know if she likes the color black, and if her ideal type is someone with black hair and eyes. The girl confirmed this, which was followed by laughter from the emperor. The mother covered her daughter, and the emperor shouted that his son had even renounced religion, and all he was doing was calling for their daughter. Because of this dishonorable child, this happened to his son. Mother asked the emperor of the Northern Empire to speak correctly. Elves are a symbol of purity and innocence, and it goes without saying that her daughter is tainted by elven blood. Whatever happened to his son, it was his choice, so he shouldn't take his anger out on her daughter. The emperor ordered that this child be sent to Varan and locked up for life. The parents said that they would never leave her alone, and the duke said that he would rather send his whole family away. The emperor noted that it was even better this way. The biggest problem was the Hardland family. Yusenil never thought she would ever return here. The atmosphere here is still so unfriendly. The girl was simply delighted, because the library was much larger than the previous one. The man asked who was there, since entry was prohibited to everyone, except members of the imperial family. The man was delighted to see Yusenil before him. The lady remarked that 14 years had passed, and he was still the same. Although His Majesty said that she would come, he had not seen his lady for so long. The man said it happened as soon as he was crowned. The emperor ordered her to stock up on all the books she had been interested in her youth and preserve them. Yusenil realized he had truly been thinking about her all this time, here in the Book of the Forbidden Area. The man also asked them to call him if they needed anything. Yusenil was very grateful to him. She read books, Tessa's changed appearance, and those words of the emperor when he exiled them to Varan. Even though he hadn't forgotten her, she would ascend the throne, leaving them in exile for another year. She continues to feel a burning sense of resentment from everything. It's not that she hated her life in Varennes, it's a dead land where the snow doesn't melt for a year. She met a good fencing teacher and did not neglect training. He was far from the control of the empire or the gossip of the nobility. Many of their families were treated differently there. It was difficult to find a book about magic, which would describe the way to return home, and she knows that it is not his fault. But suddenly, the emperor approached her and greeted her. She couldn't treat him as if nothing had happened. Yuseniel was irritated when she saw him, because she had deliberately neglected to write her name on the visitor list. She also snuck in here secretly, so she doesn't understand how he knew she was here. Yuseniel didn't understand why he continued to be nearby. The guy said that it was all because of this, that he loved her, so the girl asked him to give her an answer. She wants to know why no one is aware of the changes, as if nothing happened. Tess didn't quite understand what she was talking about, and asked if she was really interested in him. That's why he's glad. How sweet he thought it was. The lady grabbed him and said she had had enough of this. After all, she had said she wouldn't allow this to happen again. After a short silence, the emperor laughed and remarked that she was so strong. Yuseniel told him to stop acting like that, because she had told him so before. Tess pulled her close and told her he liked her right then and there. Yuseniel said again that she had had enough of this and pushed the gentleman away. The emperor noticed that she was rather rude and pushed him away forcefully. Yuseniel told him to be grateful she hadn't hit him. Tess remarked that he'd heard she had a good fencing teacher in Varennes, and the girl has become stronger than when they were children. He also knows about the teacher, her childhood friend, a weak child and a crybaby in general. Not only his appearance has changed, he seems to be different. The girl didn't understand what strange feeling was enveloping her. She was also anxious, but she still caught herself thinking that he was attracting her gaze. It's only because she likes this image. Frankly speaking, it is beautiful. The emperor chuckled, because she really does like black, and he is very happy for trying to catch her eye. He decided that this meant that it was worth it, so these words made the lady think. She asked again how he changed his eye color and hair color, and why people don't notice these changes. She asked him not to avoid answering this time. The gentleman fell silent, after which he said that he was connected with the imperial palace. The first emperor united the northern lands and founded an empire. Despite the constant attention of neighboring strange people against the rebellion from the southern empire, as well as conflicts with the nobles, everything remained unchanged. So what would happen if they betrayed him? He linked himself to the imperial palace to see everything that happened in the castle. Since then, the oath continues, and each subsequent emperor inherits this ability. In other words, it's his territory. Yuseniel noted that she hadn't even thought about it that way. This is a secret known only to the successor, and he is also stronger than his predecessors. If a person has ever been to the castle, he has the ability to control its memories. Yuseniel noted that it made sense, but he said it so flippantly. Every aristocrat was present at his coronation, so it's no wonder no one notices a change in him. The emperor noted that she was a quick learner, as always, but it didn't matter how strong the emperor's magic was. It is a common practice for power to be passed down from generation to generation after the death of the ruler, unless some powerful force is involved. As the girl thought, she needed to learn more about magic. Yuseniel asked why her memory was intact. The emperor told her that it was all because of this, that elven blood flowed through her. The child of light, like elves and fairies, is immune to the powers of the royal family. Yuseniel decided to ask why he was so calm then, but the emperor did not immediately understand what she was talking about. She could tell everyone that the emperor had deceived them, and she wondered what would happen if she did so. Yuseniel just wants to anger him, but if she doesn't succeed in even this small revenge, she will consider their 14-year exile unfair. Tess said that Yuseniel wouldn't do that to him, because she was the only one who had always been on his side. He only has her. Indeed, Yuseniel has always been by his side. But she asked if he thought she would react calmly to seeing this change in him. She had had enough today, so she decided to leave, but the emperor tried to stop her. She did say that she liked this image, so he once again asks her for forgiveness. He shouted that if this continued, he would execute Lily Xuan. Yuseniel told him what he could do and how he was doing. Tess asked if she really hated him and that changed him. The girl said that they could see each other next time and called him emperor. It's not that she doesn't like how he's changed, she just needs time to think about it. It was best for him to stay away from her for now, but in the meantime, the emperor began to cry again. He would go mad without her. Yuseniel wondered what was going on there, what his words meant about her also hating that changed him. Perhaps someone else had hurt him. He also said that she was the only one who had always been on his side, and that was truly true. There was a time when she thought the same. He offered to go with her. You're very glad they'll be attending magic classes together. Yuseniel pointed out that he wanted to go with the maid. Still, it was a good opportunity to take lessons from the Archmage. Tess smiled and said that if she liked Yuseniel, then he liked her too. As much as he trusted her, she trusted him too. 14 years ago, they came to the Archmage, and the girl introduced herself. It was honorable for her to meet him. This man is considered the pinnacle of the entire magical world, an Archmage. She was very interested to know if the Archmage knew how to cross the border of worlds. Perhaps he will notice that she is not from here, that she is from another world. The Archmage remarked that, as His Majesty had said, she was a very polite young lady. The boy confirmed this once again. That didn't happen. Tess said his friend was very smart. She was the most beautiful, the sweetest. The boy also said that he was going to marry her. He said this in front of the servants on the Empress's side. Yuseniel whispered to him that she had asked him not to say that. The boy didn't understand why or who was listening to them. He then glared angrily at the servants. So after that, they announced they were leaving. The boy said they could now look at his book together. The Archmage suggested they begin lessons. When they think of magic, they usually picture potions or spells. However, the source of all magic is mana. Mana is the basic energy that sustains human life. If they understand this, then they can begin the real work. Yuseniel said she had a question. She wanted to know if he knew the story of the Celestial Fairy and the woodcutter from Mount Guanasan. The prince remarked that he had seen her in the palace library. The Sky Fairy and the woodcutter is the story of the atom, how the woodcutter, descending to the pond, stole the Sky Fairy's clothes, and she, unable to return to heaven, fell in love with him, but soon returned home anyway. Stories are often based on real events. The heavens where the celestial fairies live, and the land where the woodcutter lived are different worlds. So she wonders if the Sky Fairy also passed into another world, and how she was reborn in this one. Yuseniel said that what she really wanted to know was if there was a way to travel between worlds. I noticed that this was an interesting question, so the girl immediately became happy. The essence of the questions lies in magical power, and the mountain has been known for its magical places from generation to generation. If you use the magic of this mountain, you can open a door to another world. It's not impossible. The girl was delighted, because she finally had the opportunity to return. Archmage G added that, unfortunately, he did not know how to open this door. Therefore, the girl immediately calmed down and did not understand why this was so. Movement between worlds was only possible for some reason, that she was a heavenly fairy. No matter how hard a person tried, he was not given to know this. Yuseniel thought that, this time, she had definitely found a way to return. The Archmage said the mountain had always been full of mysteries. Perhaps a way to communicate with other worlds could be found there. It was a hopeless explanation. Non-human beings, such as ancient dragons or deities, may know the way. Tess asked about the demons. He wondered if they might know about it. The Archmage asked His Highness what demon meant, since such ominous words could not be spoken. Demons are evil creatures that seduce people with sweet words. In the evening, the boy noticed that he slept very well in Yuseniel's room. The girl got angry because he started following her even to the carriage, and said that he also wanted to go to her house and sleep with her. Yuseniel asked him what would happen if His Highness scolded her for this. The boy said that's why it's better for her to sleep in the palace. Yuseniel said she can't even breathe properly there, so she doesn't understand how she can sleep there. Tess pointed out that it was all because she was very sweet, and the palace was all black, and she was the only one who was so fair. So he once again proposed to her that they get married quickly, kissing her on the cheek. Yuseniel became very angry, and the boy hid under the blanket and wished her good night. Sometimes it irritated her that he acted like a crybaby, but she liked his tenderness. The boy told her not to worry, because he would do whatever she wanted. Yuseniel noted that he didn't even know what she wanted, but in any case, she was very grateful to him. Yuseniel found herself in that dream again, where she was in the hospital, and the doctors were screaming that she had been wounded by robbers and was bleeding. She again saw her mother lying over her and asking for forgiveness for leaving first. She wanted to tell her mother that she felt so strange, as if her body had been torn apart. She is in so much pain that it cannot be described in words, so she asks her mother for help. After which she woke up. She was awakened by a prince who looked strange. She was surprised that he was next to her, after which the girl asked him to move away a little. Yuseniel said that he doesn't even try to listen to her. Tess said he tried to wake her up because he thought she was having a nightmare. After that, the boy asked again what she was doing. He was serious, but she kept repeating that it hurt. Yes, she is in pain. The pain from that knife stab still hasn't gone away. After her reincarnation, she constantly dreams about her past life. The moment when she is wounded by the robber, the moment of death in the hospital, all this is repeated over and over again. It was as if she were a stranger in this world, as if everything was pushing her to return home. As if she were cursed. Tess heard this without asking what she said. The girl said it was nothing special, and it was just some nonsense. He really just wanted to wake her up. Of course, he wanted to kiss her, but he refrained. Yuseniel called him to breakfast. At breakfast, her mother met her and took her in her arms, so the girl noticed that her mother was very strong again today. The mother remarked that she was an elf, after which she asked if their daughter had slept well. She's still little, so she should sleep with them. Her father came up behind her and remarked that it would be better this way since the crown prince was here. Seal agreed that he was right. The little royal family, or rather the little crown prince, the boy greeted the duchess, and they began to eat. Tess noticed that his arms seemed completely weak today. He sighed and said his fingers hurt a lot. Yuseniel gave him her food and asked him to give her his hand. She thought he had hurt himself again. The boy became embarrassed. Her mother noticed that Yuel seemed to have a weakness for the crown prince. The baby turned to her and said that it wasn't true, and she just did it because he said it hurt. Their family in this world is quite harmonious and happy, completely different from her previous life. Her father abandoned them and moved to another house. And Mom took care of them herself. Well, Mom, already in poor health, was made worse by Dad's affair. But she told her daughter that everything was fine, and that her mother would take care of her instead of her father. Her mother always gave her love, but she lived with the word pain in her mouth. Maybe that's why when she looks at Tess and cares about him, I think she cares about her mother. They both cry a lot and are quite clumsy. They even have similar personalities. Even if it hurt, she always smiled. She felt very sad because she remembered her mother. The girl made sure that after her death, her mother would still receive treatment, not that she was thinking about the worst. And she didn't love her parents here. She will always be grateful to them for the love they gave her. But she constantly remembers her mother screaming at her not to leave her alone. Unlike them, she only had one mother. She needed to return to her own world, and then all these nightmares and the pain from the wound would go away. But she constantly remembered the Archmage's words, that perhaps in the mountain, there would be a way to contact other worlds. She turned to her mother and said that she had heard that elves, unlike other people, were closer to the world of fairies. And then she believed that perhaps she knew how to move between worlds. She needs to go back. No, she must go back. The 100th day before the Hardland family's expulsion from the capital. Mother asked again and asked why she was thinking about this. It would be nice to be honest and ask for help, but these people loved her with all their hearts, like their own daughter. She can't say she wasn't from here all this time. Batman, she said, because she took lessons from the Archmage, there were some things she didn't understand. Since she was the only one in the capital, she decided she knew the answer. Mother asked her husband if he had heard it. She felt so pleased that Yel acknowledged her. Yuseniel silently apologized for deceiving them. Mother said that, unfortunately, she could not tell her anything about other worlds. The little girl started asking why this was so. Since she was from the fairy world, it was a secret. Unlike the fairies, who were born there and live there, the elves live in the human world, and, due to restrictions, they are forbidden to tell any truth. It's a kind of contract, an agreement that maintains security and world order. The girl realized that this was like a contract with a god, and asked which deity had done this, since she had heard that 2 gods ruled the continent. Her mother doesn't know this. This upset the girl, because it was a complete failure. Her mother was her last hope. The prince turned to Yuseniel and remarked that it would be better to calm down a little. Yuseniel was busy and upset because she had seen the book before, and now it was gone. But suddenly, she found it, and saw that in the beginning, there was the god of light, Lux, and the devil, the god of darkness. Lux built the continent and taught people to protect themselves from the temptations of the devil. When, after some time, the god disappeared, the continent was divided into 2 parts, those who believed in God, and those who did not. This led to repeated wars. Yuseniel was upset that this whole story was about a god. Further on, it is said that the Northern Empire, relegated to the Southern one after the appearance of the first emperor, began to win. Unlike the Southern Empire, the Northern one has no state religion. Therefore, theological research is absent here. Lately, much of the Northern Empire has begun to believe in Lux. She thought she'd get more information. Things weren't going as she thought. Tess lay down with her and told her that something was wrong with her today. Yuseniel asked the boy if he was planning to return to the palace. The boy said he would stay with her for a while and then leave. Yuseniel was surprised that he liked her so much. Tess said he really did like her, so he suggests they live together. His father said he could marry a good man. Yuseniel asked him never to speak like that in front of others, but the boy didn't understand why. This is so because his mother constantly monitors this. She even holds regular meetings of the children in order to connect her son with the Marquise's daughter. She couldn't believe that this fool didn't notice it, or simply didn't want to notice it. The girl told him that marriage usually occurs after one reaches adulthood. Tess asked again if that age was 20. Besides, her taste is different. Tess was upset and said that he knew that someone who doesn't cry, knows how to use magic, and isn't arrogant. With hair and eyes as black as the night sky, Yuseniel noted that this was exactly it. So she asks him not to say that. Tess said that he had blonde hair and blue eyes, and that's why he started crying. And he thought that perhaps she would change her taste for him. Yuseniel turned to him and said that when he cried, he had already made a mistake. She also added that she wouldn't be able to change her taste. Tess was very upset because she still couldn't love him. He can, after all, allow her to take the books and classes she likes, the jewelry and dresses she wants. Yuseniel told him again that she had already told him that it was not about money. She cannot change her preferences by force, so she called him to follow her because she needed to return to the imperial palace. The boy said something, but the girl didn't hear it and asked again. He doesn't want to go back. He doesn't want to be far from her, so he said he would go if she took his hand. Yuseniel is always kind to him, but that's not enough. He wants her to care for him and love him, so the boy constantly thought about how he could do just that. Tess was absolutely delighted when she watched Yuseniel practice fencing. He said she was really cool. Count Guard, former commander of the Imperial Knights, currently a knight accompanying the Crown Prince. He suggested that Lady take a break. She has a good stance, so he assumes that she has already practiced fencing. Behind them, they noticed a boy who approached Yuseniel and said that she had not come to fencing lessons, so he decided to go get her. This is Idil Bonaparte, 8 years old. He was surprised to see Count Guard there. Yuseniel apologized and said she forgot to say she wasn't coming. He felt like she would still beat him again in sparring later, and he believed it was all because of the extra training with Count Guard. Yuseniel said he was simply weaker than her. The Crown Prince, meanwhile, was very upset. Etel wanted to greet the Crown Prince, but he pounced on him and asked who allowed him to come here. And he shouted at the guy to get out quickly. Today, she promised to spend time with him. The Count told His Highness he could suffer again. The boy told the Lord he wanted him to throw this man out right now. Yuseniel thought she had explained everything to Tess that day, but he stood his ground. The girl approached her friend and asked if he was okay. He said he was fine. Tess turned to the girl and said that he was in pain too, and more pain than this guy. With the appearance of Edel, his sick addiction only intensified, and he tried to keep everyone away from her. At events, he said that the girl should play with him and no one else. Because of this, she and her family became victims of gossip. There was constant talk of them using their daughter to steal the Crown Princess's position. Even His Majesty is concerned about the Hardland family. It seems His Highness has been brainwashed. However, she still didn't take Tess's affection seriously. It was just a child's possessive desire to keep his first friend. She told him not to worry, because whoever she met would always remain her friend. This is how she always calmed him down, and the boy was very grateful to her. He really liked her, and soon he entered a period of early growth. Seal noticed that she hadn't seen the Crown Prince in a while. Her husband said the boy had said it was difficult for him to come now because of growing pains. Mother was upset that he was in so much pain. After all, if he refused to let even Yule visit, he must be in a lot of pain. The mother thought that her daughter was sad because they didn't see each other. Yuseniel noted that this was not the case. She was sad because she could not attend magic classes. Mother said that in that case, she could improve her fencing skills with Edel. Mother also noted that it would be good if they got engaged later. The Duke asked her what she was saying after dinner. Ciel said that if they got engaged, their daughter would be able to naturally distance herself from the Crown Prince. He thought it was because of rumors, but his wife said she didn't care. She just feels that Yuseniel shouldn't be around the Crown Prince. It's elven intuition. Yuseniel noticed that she hadn't been particularly fond of Tess lately. Getting engaged is not such a bad choice to solve these problems. If she has a fiancé, the Crown Prince will have no choice but to watch his behavior, and the increased attention to their family will also go away, and this is a completely reasonable choice, but the baby refused. Yuseniel said she had no intention of getting close to anyone. She was the one who would one day return to her home. Therefore, she shouldn't be in a deep relationship with anyone. The girl said they shouldn't worry about her relationship with the Crown Prince. He is like a younger brother to her. She felt awkward about what her mother said. When she met Tess later, she noticed such a change in him. He remarked that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Yuseniel was shocked by how much he had grown and bowed her head to him. But he got angry about this. You said that she shouldn't do this because they are alone here. She should not bow and show him her respect. If she treats him like a stranger, his heart will be broken. After that, the boy noticed that she blushed. Yuseniel turned away and said it was noisy. It's all because she feels bad every time she visits the palace, and she's tired of paying attention to etiquette, people's glances, and close supervision. Tess told her not to worry about it. She didn't have to bow to him, and she could feel free throughout the empire. He's going to change everything, so the girl asked him how he wanted to change the law, but the boy said it was a secret. She just had to wait a little. Yuseniel didn't remember exactly what the Crown Prince's face looked like then, but for the first time, she sensed elven intuition. Something was wrong. Today he was in the imperial palace all the time, and a monster appeared on the border, driving the entire empire crazy. So that ominous day was quickly forgotten. Time passed, and Tessa's 6th birthday arrived. It was the 35th day before the Hardland family's expulsion from the capital. There were so many people gathered in the banquet hall. This was the first official reception since the Crown Prince's recovery. All nobles from the rank of Viscount and above are invited. Each will try to make an excellent impression on the imperial family. Duke Hardland came with his wife and daughter. The little girl heard it said that the dress the lady was wearing was a gift from the emperor himself, and there were rumors that the prince was only getting better thanks to her. Yuseniel wondered if they knew she could hear everything. Today's event was a good chance to curry favor with the Hardlands too. Yuseniel is already eager to go home. Lady Lily Suen is also here. Rumor has it that she and the lady are vying to become His Highness's bride. They were still just kids, so many thought it was something creepy. The girl was shocked that they weren't tired of gossiping yet. They ordered everyone to be quiet because the emperor and the empress had come out. The Crown Prince was also with them. Everyone began to greet His Highness, and he announced that they could raise their heads. The emperor kissed his wife and remarked that it was a very delightful celebration and that his wife had done a wonderful job. His Highness is very sensitive to his wife, if you forget about everything else, of course. Today is the first time she's seen Tess since that day in the library. His face is so pale, it looks like he's still sick, and now their eyes met, so the boy immediately became happy and wanted to run to her. Mother restrained him and asked the Crown Prince to behave with dignity. Everyone was looking at him. Tess said he didn't care and wanted to talk to Yuseniel. Everyone was shocked, like you, that he wanted to have another conversation with her, and noticed that he wasn't even trying to hide the fact that she was his favorite. Surely the Hardlands are as eager as anyone to become related to the imperial family. They didn't think they were that evil, so they were disappointed. Everyone was curious how he managed to attract the crown prince's attention. All of His Majesty's close associates had gathered here, and this gossip had already cast a shadow on her family. Seal told her daughter to ignore it. Yuseniel doesn't want their reputation to suffer any further. Yuseniel turned to His Highness and apologized for being late. She asked permission to congratulate him on his birthday. The boy didn't understand the point of all these formalities. Yuseniel knows that Tessa doesn't like this kind of treatment. He asked why she speaks to him like that. But still, the girl had to draw a clear line between them. The girl was delighted. Once again, all the guests had finally switched their attention to the banquet. It was very good that the emperor intervened and said that she had very wonderful manners and remarked that she was simply a model of politeness. They were eager to visit and were waiting, so the exchange of pleasantries can end here. They decided to start celebrating. From now on, Tess would also observe decorum. They would have to keep their distance at events like this, but she didn't think it would upset him so much. Most likely he feels abandoned. Suddenly, someone approached her. It was Ethel. The boy asked her why she was standing there alone, after which she noticed that the guys wanted to talk to her, so he called her to follow him. But she doesn't want to talk to anyone, so she stands to the side so he can talk to them himself. The boy noted that he could not allow her to be left here alone. True friends did not do that, Yuseniel asked, so Leon traded their joint fencing lessons for a meeting with the Knights of the Imperial Guard. Ethel noted that she knew that he dreamed of taking the place of captain of the Imperial Guard, so he could not miss such a chance. There would not be a second such opportunity. Unlike other knights, warriors from the Imperial Guard obey the Emperor himself. Those wishing to join their ranks undergo a rigorous selection process. Yuseniel would have asked how he managed to obtain the invitation letter. It was all thanks to His Highness. The girl couldn't believe it, because the Crown Prince had done all this. Ethel remarked that he had heard that he himself had asked his father for the favor, and he thinks he's recognized the boy's incredible talent. But Tess dislikes Ethel, so she wonders why he'd help him. It seems he's still not fully recovered. He took some imported potion, but even that didn't help. The guy told her to be quiet because she started talking about it very loudly. She was shocked that everything was so bad. The little girl said that she thought it was all because of her growth. Ethel doesn't know the details. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince was watching all of this. The girl clearly remembers that day. Suddenly, a terrible storm broke out outside the palace. A monstrous thunderstorm knocked out the windows, and Tess lost consciousness. The Emperor was horrified when he saw what had happened to his son, and ordered the court physician to be quickly summoned. Yuseniel stood there. I didn't understand what was happening. Everyone was panicking, and that's why His Highness fainted. The frightened aristocrats rushed in panic in all directions, and thought that it was a demon, so they decided to flee. Her family was no exception, so her father grabbed the girl in his arms, and said that it was time for them to leave too. She tried to say something, but father said the healer had arrived, so His Highness would be fine. They would definitely see each other later. But Dad was wrong. That was the last time she saw the Tess she knew, and then they were exiled. And 14 years later, he appeared before her as a completely different person. Ethel asked what his friend was thinking about, and Yuseniel simply said that she was reminiscing about the past. She was simply trying to understand how she had ended up like this. She's now 20 years old. Ethel asked what exactly she remembered. He was curious, but Lady Oren nudged him. He asked why she did it. The lady replied that he was too curious. Or perhaps soldiers aren't exactly familiar with feelings. Ethel added that it was only verbal, considering she'd invited herself over for tea. The lady said that Yuseniel was actually her friend. The guy said he knew her much better. Yuseniel was shocked with you that they managed to quarrel even in her presence. Ethel noticed that this somehow didn't fit, so he was interested in how they became friends with Lady Oren. They had been at odds for a long time because of this whole thing with the prince. When their family was sent into exile, Oren began writing her a letter saying that she would like to continue their correspondence, if she did not mind. Yuseniel believes that's how their friendship began. Thanks to her, she learned about everything that was happening in the capital. And her friend hadn't forgotten about her, unlike some others. The guy was simply horrified by such words. She didn't understand how this could be, because he wrote to her every free minute, and he swears by it. She doesn't even know how he worried when she suddenly stopped answering him. He was crushed when he found out that she had been corresponding with Lady Oren all this time. A little later, after Yuseniel stopped writing to Ethel, Oren said she too was corresponding with Lady Yuel. The boy couldn't understand why she called her that. Ever since, whenever he wanted to know how she was doing, he'd had to ask Oren, and Yuseniel couldn't imagine how awkward that was. After this, the lady wondered where all his letters had gone. Oren also noted that they had never been enemies with Yuseniel. Neither of them was chasing the title of Crown Princess. And besides, her heart was already taken. She never thought her little sister would notice. People also apologized for what happened at the academy, because she heard that Lily behaved disgustingly, so she asks permission to apologize for her. Yuseniel said everything was fine, and it wasn't her fault. The girl sighed and said that her father doted on Lily because she was the youngest. But she didn't think that he spoiled her so much, and to be honest, He and his younger brother don't communicate with her. I remember her younger brother was so shy that the blush almost never left his face. However, Lily was locked in an underground dungeon, and her father was ready to beg on his knees to get her out. Yuseniel was surprised by this and said she didn't have that kind of power. The lady remarked that perhaps the emperor would listen to her. It's been 14 years since they last met, so he highly doubts it. The girl was surprised by this and noted that they were very close in childhood, and everyone thinks that they are still on good terms. She thinks Lily will learn from this incident. Yuseniel forgave her because she's Oren's sister, but next time, she won't be so forgiving. Oren noted that there were no problems, and she could do as she felt necessary. After all, she should at least learn something. When the girl sent the guests away, she unexpectedly appeared here again. Her parents planted this tree in honor of her birth, and she and Tess often played under it when they were little. She thought that this tree would die, because after their expulsion, there was no one to take care of it, and it grew very tall. After which the emperor appeared next to her again. She heard this and said that she had already told him to stay away from her. Tess said that he had no choice. She did not come to him, and he had to look for her himself. Yuseniel said she would ask him not to come to their estate anymore. The boy didn't understand why, since he had been there often before. He couldn't believe that she actually hated him. He started crying again. Tess continued to ask for forgiveness, and said that he was even ready to pardon Lily if she wished it. He only asks that she not do that to him. Yuseniel said that she doesn't hate him at all. But now that he has inherited the throne, they can no longer be friends like before. Yuseniel doesn't want nasty rumors to spread about her family again. The guy told her not to worry, because no one would dare to utter a word. He gave his word for it. Tess had promised to give her everything she wanted. He speaks the same words he spoke many years ago, as if nothing had changed. She couldn't believe that she was the only one who had changed, so she said that she would then address him as she was used to. But only in private, and he shouldn't come here again. Her parents will be embarrassed if they see him. Tess was very happy and began to hug her. She asked him to be easier, because she could not breathe, and also noticed that he was sticking. Yes, over these long 14 years we had to go through a lot, but now everything is finally working out. She enrolled in Conceum and was given access to the palace library, and can now devote her time to studying magic. Tess is fine, and her family has been allowed to return to the capital, so she can return to her world with a light heart. How glad she is that their relationship has remained the same. Tess asked if she had continued her fencing and magic training in Valen. The lady confirmed it. She was lucky to have these good teachers. Thanks to them, she didn't fall behind her peers, and was able to quickly get used to Conceum. Tess added that she was truly amazing. The girl asked about him, and what he'd been doing all this time. The emperor smiled. After they were exiled to Valen, Yuseniel had been resentful of Tess for a while. Their family was not guilty of anything, but suddenly lost all rights and privileges. Tess hadn't sent her any news, and she thought he was doing just fine without her. But when she found out what had happened to him, they say His Majesty has rarely let the crown prince out of the palace since his birthday. Only nobles below the rank of duke are allowed to enter the castle. The empress gave birth to her second son. The girl was trying something today about Tess having a younger brother, and her resentment turned to shock. After the birthday of another contender for the throne, he must have had a hard time. His parents were probably unhappy with how he had changed. Tess thought it was obvious he had been thinking only about her all this time. Yuseniel asked if that was why it took him a year after ascending the throne to return them to the capital. He doesn't even know how long she's been waiting for this. Tess asked if she really wanted to see him again that much. He took her hand and said that it made him immensely happy. After that, they almost kissed, but the lady moved away from him and said that she did not want it. This is not true at all. She wanted her family to be allowed to return home. Tess said that he was filled with impatience for their meeting. Every night, he managed in his mind to give him the gods a chance to see her face again. He missed her so much. After they looked into each other's faces, the lady began to blush, and the prince noticed it. He thought that perhaps she had a fever, but the girl said that it was him, and that he was acting strange. Tess was surprised and asked again. He also noted that he had always been like this. Yuseniel couldn't help but agree, but added that things were somehow different now. Come to think of it, Tess had touched her often before, so she didn't understand why his touch was so exciting to her now. Tess asked how exactly it could be different. The girl realized she needed to think clearly. She was probably embarrassed, because she hadn't seen him in a while. She didn't understand what had happened, or what had caused such a sudden change. The prince said that everything was fine, and he would wait until she got used to it. Yuseniel asked him to stop. Tess remarked that if he did, she'd have to come to him more often. The girl asked irritably if he thought she was burning with desire to see his face every day. She would be busy with research, so she wouldn't be able to visit him. Tess said no, and she would visit him. After that, he kissed her hand. Yuseniel doesn't quite understand what's going on. She thought it was a bit of impudence when he said she'd be visiting him. Well, she was also curious about what exactly he meant. He left some ambiguous message, and then disappeared, leaving her confused. She noticed that the light was on in the reception area, and did not understand why it was on at such a late hour. When she went inside, she saw that the Marquis was there, and he immediately rushed towards her. The Duke couldn't understand what Marquis Suen was doing. The girl was completely shocked when she saw him there. The Marquis simply begged for help. The girl realized that it had begun. Yuseniel asked her father what was going on. The Marquis continued to question what had happened, asking her to save his daughter, Lily. His daughter has already spent several days in a cold dungeon, and she may die. Yuseniel noted that she had no idea why she should listen to this. The Duke asked the Marquis where his manners were. Lily Shuen was imprisoned for insulting her family. As the injured party, there is nothing she can do about it, and if he came to ask her for a favor, then maybe he should be more polite to her. Still, the Marquis agreed she was right about everything, and apologized for his rudeness. He asked her once again to save his daughter. She was impolite, but she didn't deserve to die. Yuseniel sighed, and said that she didn't understand why he kept saying that, but even if the Emperor had allowed her execution, the order alone wouldn't have been enough, since she was the Marquis's daughter. First, it must be approved by the aristocratic confederation, but not a single member will allow this. The Duke declared that the confederation no longer exists. The Emperor abolished it, sending more than half of the active participants to the chopping block. Now she understood what Edel was talking about when he said that when His Majesty ascended the throne, a bloody wind arose in the empire, and therefore it was better for her not to get involved with him. While they were away from the capital, everything turned upside down. Finally, peace and quiet. At least the Marquis's son turned out to be a reasonable young man. If he hadn't taken it, the Duke would have had to call the guards. It's already good that the father was nearby. The son took his father home. The Marquis was indignant and told him that he was shocked with you, that he did not feel sorry for Lily at all. The Marquis's son also asked for forgiveness for his father's behavior in front of the lady. They will return to them for an official visit, and he apologizes again. Unlike her father, Nuss has control over himself and reminds her of Auron. She suggested to her father that they return to their previous conversation. The Confederation no longer exists. Its members were indeed sent to the scaffold. The Duke heard that some nobles were preparing a coup d'etat while they were in Valais. However, the rebel leader, Duke Rentia, died suddenly, and after the Imperial Knights swore allegiance to the Crown Prince, the conspiracy was forgotten. Now the lady understood why Tess had ordered the traitor's execution as soon as he inherited the throne. His number exposed the criminals and confiscated all their lands and property. Now their property belongs to the Empire. Having learned about this, he was even glad that they were not in the capital at that time, otherwise they could have fallen into hot water. They say the Emperor has become much calmer since they returned from exile. But the atmosphere in the palace is still hardly friendly, so she must be careful. Yuseniel said there was no need to worry. His Majesty would join them after the morning meeting, so she could wait for him here. Yuseniel planned to stay away from the palace for a while, but learned that the aristocrats wanted to overthrow the Crown Prince. And now she can't do anything about her anxiety. Everyone probably thinks the Emperor is an inhuman tyrant, but they don't know what Tess is really like. She wants to make sure he's okay, and at the same time ask him to release Lily Zhuan. Afterwards, the Emperor approached her and greeted her. He realized that, as she could see, he was right. He said she would visit him. He left with a smile and joy. She wondered why he was so strict with Lily Zhuan. She didn't deserve such a harsh punishment. Tess pointed out that it was all because of this, that she had insulted her, and besides, she was not so worried that he wanted to feel even less sorry for her. Yuseniel didn't understand what I was doing to her. She was just her friend's sister, and she didn't want anything to do with her friend's family. Tess said that in that case she should kiss him, and then he would let the girl go. Just one kiss. Silence followed. After a few seconds, the guy became upset because he almost succeeded. Tess thought she was going to kiss him after all. The girl blushed deeply and asked what else he wanted. Well, this time this will do. Her hand tastes good too. Yuseniel said she had had enough. She knew she couldn't cook porridge with him. Tess, please. Because it hurts him to drink. The lady said it was natural. He thought she was angry with him, but she wanted him to shut up already. The Emperor promised to spare Lily. Yuseniel shouted that she didn't care. He could do whatever he wanted. The girl was a little reluctant to believe that she really almost kissed him. She had to put him in his place. Tess asked her not to be angry with him. He apologized again. She decided not to put him in his place. After all, it was Tess, the crybaby, who was afraid of everything, threw tantrums, and followed her around. She had to constantly look after him, because he was very fragile and frail. He was like a little brother to her. At least, that's what she thought. Tess assumed she would accept his apology. Yuseniel didn't understand at all why her heart began to beat faster. Yuseniel sighed. She thought her heart would jump out. She had to summon all her self-control to keep her feelings from showing. It's a good thing she managed to escape. If Tess finds out about this, she will immediately lead her down the aisle. The girl's heart was beating very fast. She thought about how well the white suit suited him. After this, the girl became embarrassed again, because now she was only thinking about what. She decided to throw it out of her head. But she still couldn't push the Emperor away. Even his scent made her tremble. His every gesture beckons her. When he's near, her body becomes unbearably hot. He changed so much for her, and lost so much because of her. He invades her thoughts again and again, no matter how much she tries to forget about him. She seems to be as obsessed with him as he is with her. She needs to focus on returning to her world, but she's not sure she can simply turn a blind eye to how much he suffered for these past 14 years. The butler met his lady at home. She finally returned, so she asked what happened while she was gone. The butler announced that a guest had arrived, and that he was waiting for her in the garden. Yuseniel was surprised and asked again, after which she immediately went to the garden. The marquise's son greeted her in the garden. Syllables announced that someone from the Xuan family had arrived. The lady thought they meant her friend Oren, but it turned out to be Lord Nuss. The gentleman would like to discuss a recent incident. Yuseniel noted that she saw that this time he had requested a visit. It seemed he hadn't even realized this before. The gentleman said he was forced to apologize for this again. He apologizes for his father and Lily's rudeness. This was unexpected for the lady. She asked him to stand up and say that it was not he who needed to apologize. Yuseniel didn't think he would start bowing to her. He was completely different from his father and younger sister. Nuss believed that it was his duty and that his family had made a mistake, and as its next head, he should bear responsibility for it. Yuseniel added that she and Oren were very similar, and the gentleman noted that everyone thought so. The lady asked why Lillian was so different from them. Nuss believed that she knew that her sister was desperately trying to marry her off to His Majesty. At first, they wanted Oren to become the next empress, but their plan failed. In truth, Lily was born to take her place, and she was perfectly happy with the prospect. That's why she was very nervous when she learned of her return to the capital, all because of her close relationship with His Majesty. Yuseniel noted that this was not the case at all, and that they were mistaken in their assumptions. Nuss was surprised, and the lady said that she and the emperor were just friends and nothing more. This made the gentleman feel relieved. Yuseniel was very surprised and asked again, but saw that the gentleman had flushed. The lady waited for his answer. The gentleman said that he was only apologizing for the behavior of his sister Lily. Yuseniel said that in that case, she accepted the apology, and his sister would be fine, so there was no need to worry about it. Nuss was embarrassed, and said that she remained the same fair and honest girl he admired. Yuseniel couldn't believe he was flattering her, and remarked that he shouldn't exaggerate, but the gentleman said he was telling the pure truth, and wanted to repay her kindness. He heard that she had received several invitations to dinner parties and banquets, so he asked permission to accompany her. He noted that a lot had changed during her absence, and now it was necessary to come to such events with a partner. Since he was about to inherit the title of Marquise, he knew more about what was happening in the capital than anyone else. Yuseniel couldn't help but agree that he was right. It would be nice to be aware of what was going on in high society. If Nuss Suin became her companion, it would be much easier for her to gather information. So she agreed to it, and said that she would inform him about the events she planned to attend. She was also very grateful for the very noble gesture. Nuss hoped that when they met again, she would call him simply by his first name. He asked to be treated as easily as others. A few days later, Sister asked Yuseniel if the vine was ready, as the Lord's carriage was already downstairs. Gail was simply shocked because her sister looks absolutely stunning. She didn't expect this. Gail really wanted to go with her. Yuseniel remarked that she would still miss the times when she was too guilty to attend social events. The little sister added that her companion was probably tired of waiting. He's such a handsome man. When the gentleman noticed her looking at him, he immediately smiled and became embarrassed. Yuseniel remembered him saying that he hoped she would just call him by his first name. She was curious about what he was thinking. Once in the carriage, the gentleman asked how she was doing. Yuseniel was grateful he'd asked for this material, which was quite good. Nuss had heard she'd been offered a role in Consume's new magical project. It is very difficult to comprehend magic, unless one is born a scientist. Her intellect is truly astounding. Yuseniel remarked that he seemed to know quite a lot about her. The Lord remained silent to this. He noted that she was still observing formalities. Yuseniel said yes, because they weren't that close yet. He must understand that people around him might think that there is something between them if they call each other by their first names, considering that they are not even friends. The lady asked whether these rules had changed, and whether it was now permissible to address members of noble families by their first names. The gentleman laughed, but she didn't understand what was funny about it. Nuss said of course not, and everything is the same. She just always tried to keep a respectful distance from him. Even when they were little, she refused to call him by his first name. He asked if he could call her by her first name only, like Lord Ethel. The girl then said that their families would be embarrassed because of this, so it's not worth it. And then she became friends with his sister, Oren. Now the lady understood what they were talking about. Nuss admitted that he felt like there wouldn't be any problems now. Therefore, he asks her to consider him as her younger brother or close friend. Or perhaps there's another reason for her refusal. Since he's her friend's brother, she thinks she can call him by his first name. Although she had no idea why she insisted on it so much, he supposed he could treat her that way too. The lady said he could do as he wished. At the event, they greeted Oren and Etil. Yuseniel couldn't believe her eyes, because she thought they had come together. The lady asked when they had become so close. Oren remarked that she had misunderstood. When she said that Lord Nuss would be her companion, he had no choice but to invite Oren. Oren was outraged, and asked if this was how he'd chosen to thank her for the favor she'd rendered. He also remarked that he'd thought she didn't like formal receptions. It so happened that she could not afford to be ignorant of what was happening in high society, and Nuss, by the way, offered her his company. Nuss was very glad that she agreed and called her by her shortened name, Yule. Yuseniel realized that he had already settled in, not that she was uncomfortable. Edel was simply horrified, and asked since when he called her that. Nuss turned to the Lord and pointed out that he too used that nickname. Ethel had said he'd known her much longer. Arin said that the gentlemen should have fun themselves, but the ladies had a lot to discuss. Yuseniel was very grateful to her friend, because she would finally be able to breathe a sigh of relief. Arin felt like she should be the one thanking her for helping bring Lily home safe and sound. His Majesty released her on the condition that their family would hand over their possessions in the south to the Empire. Yuseniel was surprised and asked if they should give everything along with the diamond mines, which are the main source of income for their family. Arin thought it was better to lose them than Lily. Yuseniel thought Tess would simply let her go and not demand anything. He used this opportunity to weaken the Xuan family and replenish the imperial treasury. He must be looking to gain more influence and power. The lady remarked that this crybaby had made an excellent strategic move. Arin added that he was no longer the same person she knew. He had eradicated all the corruption in the Empire, so he no longer had anything to worry about. And because her family is still alive and well, it's a miracle. It seems he's handling his government duties much better than she thought, and perhaps she shouldn't have worried about that. Torin added that, after all, 14 years have passed, which is quite a long time. There are some business matters we'd like to discuss with Lord Nuss, and as for Etil, he's been rumored to be the strongest contender for the rank of captain and the Imperial Guard. During this time, everyone around her has made significant progress in their fields. It's time to catch up. Finally, the lady returned. Mother thought she had enjoyed the evening. Gale was also interested in how everything had gone. Yuseniel asked them not to even start. She had been surrounded by a noisy crowd all night, and it was very tiring. Well, considering the fact that this is her first social event in a long time, she did an excellent job. Seal asked who her daughter liked more, Nuss or Etil. The lady asked again. Mother said that if she couldn't throw it away now, she could flirt with two. At the same time, the Duke entered the room and was simply horrified that his daughter was dating two young men at once. Yuseniel tried to tell her father that this was not so, but her mother said that she should marry one. Since she returned to high society, she has had more worries. The lady said that the magic formula they had derived did not match the calculations, so she asked them to look at it more closely. During the week, she was busy with the project at Contium, and on the weekends, she attended social events with Nuss. As a result, people finally stopped judging their relationship with the hereditary principle, although rumors about it had not died down since the incident that happened with Lily. The lady is already very tired. There's no end to this paperwork. Come to think of it, she hasn't seen Tess once in all this time, due to her very busy schedule. She even spent the night in the laboratory, because she didn't want to waste time traveling home and back. Although Tess didn't contact her either, he probably has his hands full too. He's the Emperor after all. The research she is doing will help her return to her world. She has a chance to find her way home, so she needs to focus. A year has almost flown by. Both the academic and calendar years mean it's time to prepare for the New Year's celebrations. The lady sighed and realized she was practically living on air as it was, and the New Year's Eve ball was just around the corner. Her vicious circle is diet and exercise, finding the right dress, and going out. Gale was surprised that they organize balls for the new year. My sister realized that this was her first New Year's in the capital, so she didn't know. Winters in the northern part of the empire are often harsh, and people often die of cold. Therefore, it's customary there to celebrate this holiday modestly, without any extravagance. In the capital, on the contrary, New Year's is celebrated in a grand manner. On the morning of the holiday, the imperial family distributes butter and bread to their subjects in remembrance of the dead, and in the evening, a grand celebration takes place in the palace, which lasts for several days. They were invited to it. Gale said that the opening wouldn't take place on her birthday anyway. That's why Yuseniel doesn't like this hassle. On this day, he wants to sit in silence and relax, not go to balls. They always had a family celebratory dinner for her birthday, but apparently not this time, and she was too young to go with them. That's why my little sister felt abandoned. The capital is so beautiful and interesting, but she feels like a stranger here. She and her dad are always very busy, and she rarely sees them. But now, she has so many words that she can't remember their names, and the room is terribly huge. Yuseniel noted that she simply hadn't gotten used to it yet. For some time they had been deprived of all these privileges, but she would quickly get used to them. Gale added that, besides, she wasn't going anywhere. Her sister smiled at her. Gaciel decided to stop being sad, and said she'd help her pick out a holiday outfit. Yuseniel thought that was very sweet of her. The little sister was thinking about what to put on, and suddenly remembered something. She asked about that red brooch. Yuseniel was immediately surprised. This is the one she got for her 18th birthday. She was saving it for a special occasion, after all. Yuseniel took out the box with it and assumed that her sister was talking about this decoration. The girl remarked that it was big and beautiful, and she said that her friend had given it to her. Yuseniel said she wasn't sure about this experience, she thought, and so she decided to look for a dress that would suit her. Yuseniel, remember, it snowed that day too. Winter the year Yuseniel turned 18. Yuseniel was very tired, so she said that she still needed a break. The gentleman was surprised that she was already exhausted. In 10 years, she had never defeated him. The girl did not understand how she could defeat him, because he was the dragon Bernard. The boy pointed out that she was an elf, after all. Yuseniel corrected him, saying that she was only half-elf, and that didn't count. Instead of chatting idle, it's better to push the snow off your clothes. If Ciel saw her like this, he'd immediately raise a fuss. At that very moment, her mother came out. Mother said she shouldn't overexert herself on her own birthday, and hoped she wasn't hurt. Yuseniel told her everything was fine. Ciel turned to Bernard and asked if he was being too hard on her. Bernard said that she herself asked him to train her daughter, and added that she was overprotective of the girl. Yuseniel met Bernard 10 years ago on the main street of Valais when she was helping an old woman who almost slipped. Then Bernard turned to her and remarked that she was quite nimble for a human. Then he met Ciel and asked what she was doing there. Yuseniel was very surprised, because he called her mother by her first name, so she wondered who he was. After she found out that Bernard knew her mother, he became her fencing teacher. Bernard said that at 18, children are already considered adults, but her mother said that she would remain a child even if she turned 100. At first, she found it difficult to accept the fact that they were sent into exile. Yuseniel despaired at being unable to return to her world and blamed herself for her family's exile. These feelings weighed heavily on her shoulders. My sister called Yuseniel because she and her father baked her a cake and added strawberry jam to it. Time passed. They started to smoke early, and they quickly went to the table. Memories of what happened in the capital gradually ceased to trouble her, and then she received this gift. They immediately began to congratulate her on her 18th birthday. The girl was very grateful to them all. Gail couldn't wait to open her gift. Yuseniel turned to Bernard and asked if he had a present for her. He didn't understand why he suddenly had to give her a gift. Then he said he'd let her come to his place, and she could consider it her gift. She always comes when she's in a bad mood and drinks all his tea. Sometimes Ciel feels like Bernard is closer to her than they are. Yuseniel said that they spend a lot of time together, and she feels comfortable with him, so her mother is even a little jealous. The girl noted that she herself wanted Bernard to teach her fencing. She kept insisting that she should train harder and more often. It was simply a prophecy. Yuseniel was surprised and asked now, and the master said that she should be ready. Everyone was in complete shock and tension. Father didn't understand what was being said, but Ciel jumped up and told Bernard to watch his language. He apologized, though, because he was at fault. The girl hadn't seen her mother so angry since that audience with the emperor. She has no idea what they are talking about. It must be that this prophecy is somehow connected to her. The gentleman couldn't believe he was late. It was Book. He wished Yuseniel a happy birthday. Bernard asked where his tea was, and the lady said she wouldn't refill it. The girl found this funny. Beach presented his gift. It was a book on fire magic, and he was sure she would find a use for it. Yuseniel was very curious how he knew that she had problems mastering fire magic. He noted that she had had difficulty using it in the previous lesson. Yuseniel remembered this and was confused. Book turned out to be the son of the elderly woman she'd been helping, and also the only mage in Valais. His mother has long since passed away, but he spends a lot of time with her family, teaching the girl magic. Yuseniel said that for some reason, pyre magic was the hardest thing for her. Book added that it was very difficult to create a horse when it was so cold outside. Mastering this magic isn't easy, but he'll show her a few tricks at the next lesson, so don't worry about it. The girl said he was simply the best mage she knew, and his explanations were much clearer than the lectures of the capital's professors. Book was embarrassed, and said he wasn't that good. He didn't even have a rank. Mages of the Northern Empire regularly take exams in the Magic Tower, after which they are sorted into levels and assigned ranks. Sometimes she becomes very curious about who Book really is. He has the manners and skills of a high-class magician, but at the same time, he's very kind and cheerful, like everyone in Valais. Papa doesn't know him, so she assumes he's not of noble birth. After that, he gave her something else. This jewelry. Very beautiful. It shines so much that you can't even take your eyes off it. The girl had never seen anything like it, so she asked what kind of stone it was. It doesn't look like a ruby. Book said he didn't choose it, so he can't say. Yuseniel was very surprised and asked who he was from. The man paused and said he only vaguely remembered, but he was just on his way to it when he bumped into a young man who asked him to give her this jewel. Then the gentleman stopped him and asked if he could do something for him. He ordered the stone to be given to Yuseniel. The girl was very surprised. The gentleman continued to say that the stranger said this because he wanted to give it to her himself, but he couldn't, and so he asked someone to do it for him. Yuseniel asked what he looked like. She assumed the young man was blonde and blue-eyed. It was very strange that he couldn't remember the man's face. He must have cast a spell of oblivion on him. It seems Book can be trusted. Yuseniel asked again. Book remarked that they were also very strong. It might not be him, but she still decided to ask if he remembered anything. Well, the man decided to think about it and said that he was dressed too lightly. He himself seemed to be carved out of ice, and although a smile played on his lips, it turned out that he was about to cry. Yuseniel said that she would be back soon, but Book didn't understand where she ran to because there was a snowstorm outside. A lot of time has passed since then, he is probably already far away. Only one person close to her calls her by her full name. Only he would come in such a blizzard, dressed inappropriately for the weather, and wait in the cold to give her a gift, only he. She believed it must be Crown Prince Tess. She really wanted it to be him. The girl realized that in the end, it was he. Book said that he had never seen such mysterious stones, which aroused her unusual curiosity. She even tried to study its composition in consume. She still didn't find out anything, but she knows one thing for sure. Every time she looks at this bright red gem, her heart is ready to break into 1,000 pieces. It's as if he's begging her not to forget him. Judging by the size of the stone, it's probably quite expensive. She is very interested in what he was thinking when he asked Book to give this to her. Gail was absolutely delighted because the soup was simply amazing. Her parents told her to try something else, and there are so many things here. Father thought that something was wrong with Yule, or that she wasn't hungry. The girl said that everything was fine, and there was no need to worry about her. Lately, she had been spending the night in consume quite often, so they assumed the workload was so great. There have been numerous mana surges in the Empire over the past 10 years. She needs to thoroughly study all the available information. If it weren't for tomorrow's New Year's ball, she would have spent the entire night reading. Her father was simply horrified and said that she had just transferred to this academy and there was no need to burden herself with such work. Father added that, moreover, it was incredibly difficult to combine participation in such a large-scale project with studies. Mother asked him to keep it down. Eugenial said she promised it wouldn't reflect on their family's reputation. She studied history and humanities with Bernard and Buck, and was significantly ahead of the curve, so she won't have any problems with her academic performance. Her father was simply horrified and didn't understand what their family's reputation had to do with it. Her father doesn't worry about that. Mother sighed and said that, besides everything else, she attends social events every weekend and hardly gets any rest. Nuss said he would pick her up the following weekend, and the lady wished him a good journey. Eugenial immediately thought that as soon as she got to the room, she would immediately sit for the test. The parents were very worried and said that they were just concerned about her health. The girl said that her father had been appointed minister and that she would be able to help him if she knew what was going on in high society. Then they will be able to avoid a repeat of what happened 14 years ago. But she doesn't need to shoulder this unbearable burden on her fragile shoulders. They ask her to share it with them, because they are family after all. Indeed, they are family. That's why she wants to protect them. If she takes care of everything in advance, she will be able to leave them calmly when the time comes. Eugenial has become very accustomed to this world, so much so that she sometimes wonders if she really wants to go home. But she is still tormented by nightmares about what happened 20 years ago, pain in the lower abdomen, and the way her mother begs her not to leave her alone. Eugenial can still hear her mother's voice and sobs. Seal turned to her daughter and asked if she really continued to have nightmares. Her father was absolutely horrified and said they needed to call a doctor immediately. Gail asked her sister if it was true that she had nightmares. Eugenial stroked her head and said that no, she had forgotten about them since childhood and was sleeping like a baby. But let it be so. He won't overexert himself anymore, so that they don't worry. Her father said that was great and asked her to tell them if she needed help. Eugenial noticed that her mother was happy when she started attending dinner parties, so she asked why. Seal said that she needs to meet a lot of men to find the one. To be honest, she was even worried that she would marry a lazybones like Bernard. His age is unknown, but father said that Bernard is too old for his daughter. Seal said that she did the same for him, but that didn't stop them, and even though Bernard has a bad character, he's quite attractive. That can't be taken away. Your father was shocked with you that his darling was praising another man while sitting next to her. Gail said that her sister likes much more attractive and gallant young men. Her type is modest men with unexpected smiles. Eugenial was simply horrified because she understood who they were thinking about now. The girl asked her sister why she had decided that. Gail asked if she remembered how they had gone grocery shopping last winter. And then she was helping a boy on the street. She asked if he was okay. After which the guy thanked her for her help. The lady made sure he wasn't hurt and noted that he had hit it pretty hard. The gentleman laughed and said that thanks to her, he was back on his feet again. Eugenial thought that it was the crown prince, but he immediately said that his name was Miel, and he asked to be allowed to treat her to tea in gratitude for her kindness. The girl thought she was acting as if she'd fallen, and that he wasn't the crown prince. She apologized, and said she was in a hurry. Miel said that it was a great pity, but if they met again, he would definitely return the favor. Gail said that she couldn't take her eyes off him, so that's what her sister thought. It was because he looked very much like the crown prince. That's why she was staring. Mother asked again if she was saying his name was Miel. She said that since his name ended in L, perhaps he was an elf too. Elven names ending in L. Gail was absolutely delighted, as she had never met other elves. The elven youths are wonderfully handsome, simply stunning. Gail asked if they were truly even more handsome than their father. Seal promised to tell her when there were no prying ears around me. The lady said that she was joking, so she asked her husband not to be angry. Eugenial wants to return home as soon as possible, not only because of the nightmares. The more time she spends with them, the less confident she is that she can easily part with them. Seal turned to her husband and did not understand why he was so sad. His wife thought something was bothering him. He hadn't said a word since dinner. The master said it was nothing. Ciel decided to say that what she said at dinner was just a joke, and Mylene is the only one for her. After that, she kissed him on the forehead. The gentleman said that he knew about it. He just remembered the nightmares that tormented their little girl as a child. He remembered how they ran because the baby was screaming in her sleep. She was in a lot of pain. She asked for help and drove everyone away from her. She called for her mother. Ciel said that she was nearby. Her father called for doctors. The lady tried to calm her daughter down, but she said that she didn't want to die. Mylene noted that she remembers how bad things were for their daughter. Ciel didn't understand how she could forget, but even though the baby was suffering, the first thing she did when she woke up was calm them down. She didn't want them to worry about her, and that makes her worry even more. They have no idea how she truly feels. Ciel asked if he remembered that for a while. Eusenil had been sulking at the crown prince for returning them to the capital immediately after his accession to the throne. The father confirmed this, and noted that Bernard had told them about it. He had said that she was disappointed. A dubious cause for joy. The lady was happy to hear this, because her daughter had always hidden her feelings, and at that moment, she thought she was ready to open up to them again. She thought Eusenil had finally felt free, but she closed herself off from them again as soon as they returned to the capital. It's as if she's running from something. It would be better if they stayed in Valen. Ciel told her husband that they must protect their daughter from the imperial family at any cost. To endure what is coming, Eusenil needs someone more reliable, not a powerful ruler, but someone who will do anything for her. She wishes she could fall in love with someone sooner, but she doesn't seem to want to rush things. Mylene told his wife not to worry, because he knows that he is human, and therefore cannot fully understand what she feels. But lately, the emperor hasn't been looking for anything other than their daughter, and she herself isn't eager to be with him, so everything will be fine. It's the day of the New Year's Eve ball. A huge crowd has gathered, all dressed to the nines, and filled with festive anticipation. But of course, none of them can outshine the main star of the evening, her daughter, Eusenil. The girl didn't understand why she was a star. Her mother said it was her birthday. Eusenil noted that her sister had done a great job choosing her outfit. She's waiting for them at home, so they need to get back as soon as possible. She's sad there, and before they go, she asked them to have some fun for her. Mother remarked that she was a wonderful little sister, and was very pleased, because her girls were very friendly. Eusenil wanted Mother to stop this. By the way, Mother looks especially elegant today. Ciel said her father promised to arrive at the ball as soon as he finished work at the palace. But he never liked such events, so she doesn't understand why this is so. After these words, the father immediately showed up and said that he had been waiting for them for a long time. I sent him such a beautiful wife and daughter. Ciel said he looked stunning too. Eusenil added that they were well suited to each other. Their father said this was their first public appearance since returning to the capital, so they needed to look the part. Everyone thought they were a stunning couple, and their daughter remarked that they were perfect. Ciel said that if she was jealous, she should get married soon. She also added that she already has 2 worthy candidates for the role of groom. Or maybe they're good enough for me. She's quite demanding of men. My wife also suggested we go inside. The high level of her standards can only be blamed on their unattainable ideal. The woman noted that over these 14 years the lady had not aged a bit. The Duchess was beautiful. Eusenil was surprised, as there was a whole line of people waiting to see them. The lady had said she was an elf. Mother was making a great effort to maintain her composure. She was probably unaccustomed to socializing. If she had her way, she would have simply ignored everyone. The lady decided to go for a walk. It had been a long time since she had been in this banquet hall. It had not changed at all since that day. There she noticed a painting and wondered if it had always hung there. She wondered what was under that blanket. She'd only heard about this painting before. It was a creation of the Empire, painted by Roslanchen. The first emperor made a deal with a deity. I received all the knowledge of the world and became a magical swordsman, and then founded the Northern Empire. It is this historical moment that is shown in the painting. But Lux is usually painted in white. For some reason here he is depicted in black. The legend of the first emperor, who founded the Northern Empire, is passed down by word of mouth, but despite the fact that their country came into being through divine blessing, it has no state religion. Although there is such a thing in the Southern Empire, and she always found this fact interesting, however, this picture depicts someone else. She hadn't seen him mentioned in any book. For some reason, she had a bad feeling about this. Eusenil, don't think that there is any other side than luxury. Suddenly, Atel called her and asked why the birthday girl was standing alone and bored. He wished her a happy birthday and assumed she was tired of social upstarts. That was exactly it. He thought she was alone here. Eusenil said her parents were in the main hall, after which she asked why he was asking. Atel simply didn't notice anyone he knew nearby. Suddenly, a red-haired girl stood between them and addressed the Lord. Arin said she'd almost forgotten, so she immediately began congratulating her. The lady was very grateful. Edel was outraged because the lady had frightened him. The girl had said that the New Year's celebrations were about to begin, and they were somewhere chilling. Edel said that he knew. She doesn't understand why he was scaring her. Arin said she was exhausted trying to find them, and she didn't see any gratitude. Yuseniel sighed, because those two were at it again. They were incorrigible. They were behaving like children. So she told them to hurry up, because everyone was waiting for them. Etiel told them not to push. He also noted that she was quite strong. Yuseniel didn't want to attract unnecessary attention this evening. But her father came up to her and said that the first dance is supposed to be with her father, so he assumes that she remembers this. Edel thought it was a bit too old-fashioned. Nuss added that if she danced with her father, her holiday would be hopelessly ruined. But father said that their family had been deprived of the pleasure of attending this ball for many years, so they needed to make up for lost time. Apparently that's impossible. Yuseniel said that she had to decide something like that. But they don't even listen to her and continue to argue. Mother remarked that she was in great demand. This whole argument erupted because of Mother. But the lady pretended not to understand what she was talking about. They had all met together a few minutes ago. There is a popular belief that the person to whom a girl who has reached adulthood gives her first dance at a New Year's ball will end up with her betrothed. Yuseniel told her mother it was a complete feeling. Ciel said that sometimes such things happen in the world that you're amazed. The boys heard this, and the father was the first to approach her and asked if she would do this honor to him. That's how it all started. My father said that, according to the rules of good manners, a daughter should dance her first dance with her father. The boys thought it was utter nonsense. 1 against 2, and the father was outnumbered. They told him that women have the right to choose who they dance with, and asked for the young couple to take the lead. It seems he was in a difficult situation, so he asked his darling to save him. Yuseniel turned to her father and said that her mother wanted her to get married quickly, and that she was unlikely to listen to him. Ciel said that if that was the case, then she could dance with her father. The guys were very upset, but the woman said her decision was irrevocable, so they shouldn't even try to convince her otherwise. Yuseniel asked her mother what was wrong. She thought she would ask Nuss or Etiel to dance. For some strange reason, the air in the palace thickened so much that it became difficult to breathe. In a sense, it was always stuffy here, but not to this extent. Yuseniel believed something was wrong with her mother. She couldn't understand why her mother wasn't answering her. The lady suggested returning home early. The girl was surprised, and her father began to suspect something had happened. It wasn't air, it was aura, and it was creeping up on Yuseniel. It was about to swallow her whole. But it was completely unclear where she came from, and then they announced that His Highness the Crown Prince had arrived. Yuseniel wondered what was going on, that she hadn't seen him for a long time. He seemed to have lost weight. But otherwise, he remained the same. Mother turned to her and told her to stay close to her and her father. Yuseniel did not understand why this was so, and her mother asked her to promise that she would not leave her side for a single step. Everyone immediately began greeting the emperor. Yuseniel didn't quite understand what was going on. She told her mother that they should bow. The emperor said he had had enough and ordered everyone to raise their heads. He has been very busy lately, and therefore has not had the opportunity to see them. The emperor was very pleased to see their entire family here. Ciel asked her daughter to step aside. The girl didn't quite understand what had caused this sudden change. She couldn't believe it was all because of His Majesty's appearance. Everyone immediately began to look at that jet black hair and majestic posture. Tess's hair was raven black, perfectly styled, immediately catching the eye. This color was a clear sign of his imperial lineage, the symbol of a true heir. This shade wasn't just beautiful, it was sacred. Ciel believed they had all been brainwashed at some point into believing these traditions and attributes were immutable. Despite all her doubts, she couldn't understand how this was possible. Tess Balloon, standing before her, calmly said that their empire's anniversary had arrived, meaning it was time for celebration. He invited everyone to celebrate this momentous occasion, hoping that the coming year would bring them even more success and stability. It felt like his confidence in the future was unshakable, no matter how difficult things were for him. He asked everyone to have fun, forgetting all their troubles. Flower petals began to fall, disappearing as soon as they touched his palm, dissolving into thin air like a mirage, leaving behind only the ephemeral quality of the moment. The spectacle created an atmosphere of a vanishing past, and from it, Yuseniel felt as if the Tess she once knew was vanishing, giving way to a new, incomprehensible, and much colder emperor. In an attempt to distract herself from her obsessive thoughts, Yuseniel suggested to her father that they go dancing on the sidelines and return home immediately, lest they lose their inner harmony. But her plan was soon thwarted by the emperor himself. The emperor remarked that he remembered who was celebrating their birthday today. He expressed the hope that everyone present would happily join in the congratulations, not expecting his attention to be drawn to another, far more important goal. Tess, in turn, invited His Highness to accept his congratulations, but the lady, realizing that ballroom etiquette must be observed, reminded him that she had promised her father this first dance, and, unfortunately, she would not be able to communicate with the emperor now. The emperor, shocked by her refusal, couldn't believe the people wouldn't let him steal her first dance, that this gesture was so important to her. He boldly invited her to dance in front of all the guests, putting her in an awkward position. Tess, not expecting him to use his anger against her family, still knew that if she refused, the rumors would start again, so she was almost ready to agree. But then her father, hearing her request, shouted, "No!" The Duke, seeing the situation growing tense, asked the Emperor to allow them to spend this moment together, but in response, he only shrugged, expressing his concern. Seal, not wanting to make a big deal out of it, asked her daughter to come closer. Her father proudly remarked that he had long dreamed of dancing with his daughter at this particular ball, and that she was truly important to him. Tess turned to Duke Hardland and remarked that traditionally, young girls were expected to dance with their peers. This wasn't disrespectful, but rather an old imperial tradition, and dancing with the Emperor would enhance her social standing. Eusennial wondered when Tess had learned to express her thoughts so clearly and reasonably. The mistress felt how her indecision sometimes affected her decisions. This wasn't just a question about the dance, but about her position. She thanked Tess for the offer, but explained that her daughter had already promised this first dance to her father, a promise she could not break. She could only hope the Emperor would understand. The Emperor contained his disappointment, but did not insist, adding that he would not interfere with her if she nevertheless decided to keep her word and give the dance to her father. In the end, he suggested that Lady Eusennial herself make this difficult choice, for it was her day, her first dance. The thought hung in the air, and all eyes froze for a moment. Eusennial sensed the Emperor was being cunning. However, she firmly stated that she would dance with her father, as she had promised. There was not the slightest hesitation in her voice, though she sensed that her decision concealed her personal feelings. The Emperor seemed resigned to this decision, though he didn't hide his slight disappointment. But then, unexpectedly, he grabbed her hand and whispered her name. Eusennial almost thought he was about to kiss her right there in front of everyone. However, he merely noted that she was wearing the very brooch that suited her so well. The lady didn't understand what exactly the Emperor meant, but something in his voice made her wary. Tess asked if she was curious about the stone. He promised to tell her about it, but demanded her first dance in exchange. Then, smiling, he asked what she would say to his proposal. Eusennial considered this. It was obvious Tess was unwilling to back down, but she decided to agree anyway, offering her hand to the Emperor, intending to fulfill his condition. It was a compromise she could accept. Seal, watching this, didn't agree at all. Concern flashed in her eyes, and she hastened to tell her daughter to return immediately. She understood that the situation was getting out of control. Tess looked at the Duchess in surprise, noting that her words clearly contradicted established rules. He asked if she truly believed that two young people had no right to dance together, especially on such an important occasion. He reminded her that this was one of the oldest rules of ballroom etiquette in their empire, and if she thought otherwise, perhaps she was acting this way because she feared he might harm her beloved daughter. But Tess hastened to reassure her, assuring her that Lady Eusennial's safety was his top priority. He gave her his word that not a single hair would fall from her head, and that he dared ask for no more. He added that, of course, only if Eusennial herself didn't want it. And so, when everything became clearer, he suggested they go to the dance floor, assuring them that no one would interfere. When they walked away, Eusennial, still tense, told him that he knew perfectly well she would never even consider consenting to his advances. Tess, in turn, asked if she was truly so sure of that. During the dance, the Emperor began to notice something was wrong with the girl. She didn't look as happy as she should have. He couldn't figure out what was bothering her. Her face reflected only anxiety, and her movements were constrained. At one point, the girl stepped on his foot, and Tess began to think she was angry. He couldn't be sure, of course, but her behavior clearly didn't match the positive emotions he expected. Eusennial explained guardedly that it wasn't that. She simply felt uncomfortable in his arms, and it was difficult to dance under such tension. Tess, chuckling, began to wonder if perhaps he wasn't leading her well. Eusennial was very embarrassed, and said she didn't think she danced very well. It wasn't so much a confession as an attempt to ease the tension they both felt. The gentleman reassured her. The Emperor, trying to lighten the mood, said there was nothing wrong with that. She could simply follow him, and the dance would be over. There was kindness in his eyes, and he wanted to help her feel confident. When Tess looked at her, he couldn't help but think she was a true goddess. Her every gesture, every movement, radiated such beauty that he felt it was a crime to be so charming. Eusennial, feeling increasingly uncomfortable, began to get angry. She asked if he was going to hold her for the entire dance, as she was tired of all the attention and pressure. She asked him to let her go, to regain at least some personal space. She noted that all their guests could hear their conversation, but fortunately, they couldn't fully see their interaction. The Emperor, noticing her confusion, wondered how to resolve this awkward situation. He made up his mind, and again, with a slight movement of his hand, the petals began to fall. This gesture distracted the guests, and now no one could focus on what was happening between him and Eusennial. Tess felt he'd managed to divert everyone's attention from their dance, and now everyone was focused on the falling petals. At that moment, the mistress, seeing all eyes on them, asked him to stop fooling around. She adopted a more formal tone and began addressing him as you, knowing how much he disliked her formality. It was her way of cooling his ardor and returning to a calmer atmosphere. Tess, a little disappointed by her approach, called her a pest, but the mistress replied that he shouldn't call her that. She asked him to stop using magic, lest his frivolous tricks end badly. He'd expended too much energy trying to distract people, and she'd never seen him use such charms to bewitch people. She realized his actions might have been overly theatrical, but she was surprised he'd needed no preparation. Tess was shocked that she thought it was frivolous, because for him, it was a way to make her day special. He just wanted her to feel important, not something overdone. He said that if she was worried about what others thought, he would simply erase their memory of what happened, and she shouldn't worry about how they would perceive her actions. This would require a little more effort, of course, but it would be worth it. He assured her that now she should think only of him, and everything else would be left in the past. Tess assured her he could give her anything she desired, but his words burned her skin, and she couldn't help but feel that his antics would one day come back to haunt her, because nothing he did was simple. Eusenio paused and said that if he truly wanted to please her, he should tell her about the stone and the brooch. She tried to understand what exactly was hidden in this gift he might have offered her. She conducted extensive research herself, but still couldn't figure out exactly what stone the brooch was made of. The stone remained a mystery to her, and she was determined to unravel the secret. Tess noticed her curiosity and replied with a slight smile that if she truly wanted to know more about the stone, he was willing to tell her. However, in exchange for her first dance, he was sure she would find this small compromise interesting. Eusenio hesitated briefly, wondering whether to agree, but in the end, she offered her hand to the emperor, deciding the exchange was entirely reasonable. She wanted to know more, and especially, she was curious to discover the secret of the brooch. Tess, feeling like she'd given in, nodded with satisfaction. He'd said the stone wasn't just jewelry. It was rare and could tell a lot about the wearer. It wasn't just a gift, but a sign. Eusenio, looking more closely at the stone, sensed that some special power lurked behind it. The stone was dark, almost black, with deep shades of blue. It shimmered like stars in the night sky and seemed almost alive. Tess continued to explain that the stone was part of an ancient artifact passed down through the imperial family. This stone was a symbol of power and strength. It contained magical energy used in the most important rituals. Eusenio felt her interest heighten. The stone was truly something special, and she wondered if all this might be more important than she'd imagined. But she wasn't in a rush to make a decision, and decided it would be worthwhile to talk to him later. Tess approached again and said that if she really wanted to know everything he had to say, she would have to dance with him. He was sure it wasn't just a dance. It was an opportunity to learn more about her own destiny and future. Eusenio replied with a smile that she could promise him a dance, but she was in no hurry to reveal all her thoughts. She understood that life was full of mysteries, and this was only one of them. The dance, like so many other things in their lives, was just part of the game. So she wants to know what it is. Eusenio demanded an explanation from Tess, insisting he explain what this heart was that was troubling him so much. Tess felt her insistence fill the space between them, and he didn't know how to explain exactly what was bothering him. Eusenio grew increasingly puzzled and began asking questions. Tess looked at her and, sighing, said that it was literally his heart. He said it wasn't a metaphor, but truly his heart, which made him suffer and ache. He began to say that her appearance in his life had played a huge role. He felt that her light could somehow help him understand this painful state. Thinking back to his childhood, Tess felt only pain and loneliness. He was alienated from everyone, unsure how to relate to those around him, and unsure what exactly was making his heart ache so much. The maids ran frantically around the palace, trying to find His Highness. Tess was always disappearing, and they couldn't figure out where he could have gone. But finally, they found him in one of the palace's secluded corners. Last time he hid in the pantry, and this time he was hiding again in a dark corner. And then they found him. The maids rushed to his side, ready to help, but Tess refused. They hastened to report their discovery to His Majesty, but despite this, they could see that something was wrong with the boy. He looked very weak and anxious, almost exhausted. The maids couldn't understand why he was shaking so much, and asked if he could hear them, but the boy simply remained silent, unwilling to explain. He felt his body aching with pain, and didn't want to look at anyone. Tess saw them as black, as if their souls were hidden from his sight, as if their auras were clots of fog that obscured all their true feelings. He himself suffered from this. The boy couldn't contain himself any longer, and hit one of the maids to keep them from getting so close. The others started asking if she was hurt, but he didn't want to answer. For a moment, the maid actually felt pain, but she was fine. However, Tess felt anxiety and anger wash over him again, and a fire flared in his heart once more. He screamed at them to leave him alone, to stay away because he didn't want them to touch him. Every gesture they made caused him pain, and he felt as if he were being burned. The maids, unable to understand what was happening to the boy, tried to calm him, but he was obsessed with his perception of other people's souls and could not escape the pain their presence caused him. There was unbearable pain in his eyes, and Tess couldn't hide it. He cried all the time because he felt the pain growing stronger and didn't know how to get rid of this excruciating feeling. Tess was an unusual child, possessing an ability he couldn't explain, the ability to see the souls of others. The aura of each soul was like a veil that concealed a person's identity from the eyes of others. The boy never understood the emotions of those around him because he couldn't see their faces. For him, souls were everything, and he couldn't discern them from the outside. This created even greater isolation and misunderstanding. He felt like the human soul was covering everything around him like a veil, preventing him from connecting with others. Tess thought his mother was upset again, and this tormented him. The boy asked his mother if she was angry with him, but she replied that she wasn't at all. Her disappointment was understandable, however, as he had skipped classes again and even hit the maid. Tess knew she didn't understand him. She thought he was just a spoiled child, but he couldn't explain what was tormenting him. The souls of people were so uneasily intertwined that it seemed unbearable. Tess told his mother he simply didn't like people. He felt their greed and selfishness constantly surrounding him, and it was excruciating. He felt as if they were ready to swallow him whole. His mother, hearing this, couldn't believe it. She couldn't understand why her son was so against the world. She said such thoughts shouldn't occupy his mind. She didn't want to hear his excuses. He repeated the same thing again, just like before. And so they had to find new maids again, because his behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. Tess's mother couldn't understand why he couldn't just be like all the other children. In her eyes, he was just a capricious prince, and she couldn't understand why he was so preoccupied with the souls of others. But Tess knew that only he could see the souls of others. Each person had their own unique aura, their own color, and this created a constant pain in his world. His eyes suffered from this constant sight. His eyes ached because they saw too much, because they were confronted with a reality others couldn't comprehend. He was alone in this, and it felt like a real punishment. The mother sighed, looking at her son, and said she believed him. She knew that if she wasn't there for him, no one else would. She promised to support him, even though she didn't understand what he was going through. Tess felt a sense of relief at these words. He believed his mother was finally beginning to understand him, and this lifted his spirits. He was grateful for her support, even though he still felt alone in his pain. Tess's mother thought he was still a child, after all, and that at his age, such tantrums were normal. Children often go through hard times, and perhaps with time, he would outgrow this oddity. She hoped he would gradually learn to control his emotions. Perhaps, if she played along with him a little, he would soon calm his fears and begin to think like an adult. But her plans for the future were even grander. When Tess grew up and was ready to inherit the throne, she planned to arrange a marriage for him with Duke Xuan's daughter. This would be the right step to strengthen imperial power and ensure stability. The boy, having listened to all these reflections from his mother, felt as if his life had once again been placed at someone else's mercy. He felt how far this was from what he himself would have wanted, and he decided he couldn't come to terms with it. He said she was a liar. The mother was shocked to hear such words from her son, and began asking him what he was even talking about. She couldn't understand how this could happen, since she had always been there, trying to support him. But Tess continued that she was only pretending to believe his words and feelings. He saw right through her, and knew she was only interested in her goals, not him as a person. This upset him, but he couldn't remain silent. The mother was stunned and furious, asking how he dared speak so insolently to her, his own mother. She couldn't believe her own son was accusing her of dishonesty, and it was a huge blow to her. In response, she stated that it seemed he could use a few lessons in manners. She believed that Tess simply didn't understand how to behave with people, and it was unlikely that at his age, he could fully comprehend all his actions. That evening, as the day drew to a close, she approached her husband, the emperor. She expressed her concern that Tess needed more attention, and that perhaps he would benefit from having a younger brother. The emperor laughed at first, not taking her proposal seriously. He believed Tess was still too young to worry about such things. In his view, the child still needed to grow, and any problems with him were temporary. His mother, on the other hand, was worried. She explained that Tess needed someone to look up to. She was also concerned about his health. He continued to have seizures, which was troubling her. The emperor, seeing her uneasiness, disagreed, believing it was just another whim. However, his mother insisted that perhaps it would be better if Tess made a new friend, so he wouldn't feel lonely. She suggested that the Duke of Xuan's daughter, a young woman, might be a suitable role. Perhaps if they met, Tess would change for the better and begin to see life differently. Tess couldn't even imagine revealing his feelings and thoughts to anyone. His world was too dark and sick to allow anyone into his life, and everything changed only after meeting her. Having the ability to see other people's souls is not as great as it might seem at first glance. The maid played with him and told him not to be afraid, because this rabbit was his friend. She greeted him. The boy was surprised and asked again if he really was his friend. The maid said she and the bunny really wanted to make friends with him, which turned out to be much easier than she thought. Earlier, the empress said that whichever of them could entertain the crown prince would receive a generous reward. Although the empress's offer was generous, she was reluctant to accept it because all the maids who had ever interacted with the crown prince had lost their jobs. If she decided to try to get along with the crybaby prince, she had plenty of courage. She believed he was still a child, albeit a capricious one. She would simply play with him and receive a good reward. Tantrums and hysterics are one thing, but she hasn't seen this boy's eyes. Her gaze sends shivers down her spine. Tess asked her if she really wanted to be friends with him. The maid didn't understand why he frightened them so much, since she thought he was a completely ordinary child. That's why she said that she would always be on his side, and that he could trust her. The boy said she was a liar. The woman was shocked, and the boy said she was lying to him. Tess knew this for sure. The woman immediately apologized and begged him to forgive her. She ran away from there. The boy noticed that she didn't last long. He's really fed up with all this. That's why he wants to be alone. Since he refused to communicate with anyone except his family, his father decided to help him make friends. The father asked him to be polite and courteous when he met the young Duchess. Duke Hardland is loyal to the imperial crown, and his family may provide him with great support in the future upon his ascension to the throne. Besides, he'd heard that he and his daughter had a lot in common. Tess couldn't believe it. It seems this is the girl the maids were gossiping about the other day. They said the lady had never cried since birth, and they thought it odd. Oh, these children. While one cries endlessly, the other does not cry at all, but they are so different that it seems that they were made for each other, to balance each other out. The boy wondered what was so interesting about her that people were talking about her so much. He couldn't understand what attracted people to this girl and what she meant to everyone. But he still had to go to this reception, despite his inner resistance. Tess didn't understand the point, since to him, all people were the same, and he didn't understand why he needed to draw attention to himself. He asked his father if this was really necessary, because his eyes were starting to hurt from looking at other people, at their hypocrisy and emptiness. The emperor, addressing the crown prince, said that he was still too young and did not understand many things, so for now he turned a blind eye to his whims. But this did not mean that he would be allowed to do whatever he wanted. He warned him that he would no longer tolerate his displeasure and would not allow him to upset his mother. The boy paused, unsure of what was being discussed or what exactly he should do. Tess didn't understand what he expected from him. His father continued to insist that he behave properly, which only irritated him further, as it all seemed like empty words. He didn't understand why everyone always cared so much about how he felt, while his own feelings seemed so insignificant. Gritting his teeth, the boy smiled and promised to be polite. The gentleman praised him, calling him a good boy, but Tessa was already sick of this hypocrisy, of false words that had no meaning. The palace was full of people with selfish motives and filthy desires, and even his mother was obsessed with achieving her own goals, albeit the loftiest ones. Tess couldn't understand how anyone could love her. And all this time, his father loved such a woman. The boy's eyes ached from this world, and he no longer wanted to look at other people's souls, full of filth and hypocrisy. Who could have known how exhausted this had made him? His thoughts were interrupted when servants announced that the Duke had arrived with his wife and daughter. The boy hadn't even known it would be an important meeting. When he first saw her, he was blinded by her radiance. For the first time in his life, he was able to see someone so clearly, unveiled. It was something different, something extraordinary. Tess couldn't see into her soul the way he was used to with other people, but with her, it was different. Her inner world was like clear glass, and that caught his attention. From the moment they met, Tess wanted to never be separated from her. His heart was overflowing with emotion, and he couldn't shake the thought of her. He knew that perhaps she would consider his feelings ridiculous and naive, but he could not control what was happening in his soul. In his tiny world, full of pain and suffering, she became the only source of light that dispelled the darkness. She became the spark that could melt his isolation. Eusennial was the only person who saw him as more than just the crown prince, but a true friend. This was perhaps what Tess had been missing in his life. She noticed his nose was bleeding and quickly told him to keep his head down, but he confidently said he was fine. She didn't believe him and immediately insisted he accept her help. Eusennial noticed that he was often sick, and the boy was surprised, not realizing that she could notice this. He realized it was true. If he thought about it, no one in his family had ever been sick, and that was unusual for him. She also added that he should remember to keep his head down and that she would pinch his nose to stop the bleeding, warning him to tell her if it hurt. The boy, however, didn't consider it anything important and allowed her to do whatever she saw fit. He felt she could be trusted and that her concern was genuine. Over time, the more time they spent together, the less he cared about anything else. Eusennial became more important to him than any palace intrigues or court games. The boy felt like Eusennial was beginning to like him, and he hoped that one day she would love him too. He dreamed of them getting married and living happily, despite all the difficulties. But every time he tried to get closer, she repeated that he wasn't her type, that he wasn't her ideal. These words made him doubt himself and feel disappointed. He thought about how to change his appearance, because he knew that she liked brunettes with black eyes, and he thought that if he could become like that, she would notice him. This was the last straw. He lost his composure, as he couldn't understand why she couldn't love him for who he was. Eusennial said she didn't want to attend another social event because she didn't like the extra attention. It irritated her, and she preferred simplicity. She never liked ostentatious things, neither luxurious dresses nor jewelry. She knew what she liked and what she didn't, and she didn't try to pander to fashion trends. She also never worried about what others thought of her. All that mattered to her was what was going on inside, what she felt. All that mattered to her was her studies and her pursuit of knowledge. Sometimes she said things so complex that Tess couldn't understand a word. She was a mystery to him. Eusennial wondered if there was a way to travel between worlds, but unfortunately, if there was such a way, they didn't know about it. It pained Tess to see her in despair, so he decided he would give her whatever she wanted. This was a natural decision for him, as he couldn't stand by while she was sad. If anyone asks why he does this, he'll give a simple answer, because he loves Yuseniel, and for him, that's enough to make any decision. Yuseniel was very kind, because even when he was bored, she always found time to play with him, to show that he was important to her. She didn't like Situ, and was always attentive to his requests. She played with him, read books, and this brought him joy. The boy was delighted by her attention. Yuseniel noticed his eyes were red and worriedly said that he was probably sick again. She always noticed the slightest changes in him. Even the most insignificant things couldn't escape her gaze. The way she looked at him and spoke to him made his heart flutter. While she was reading the book, Tess began to yawn, so the girl assumed that he hadn't gotten enough sleep. The boy told her that this was not so, but he himself remembered that he had had another attack the previous night. Yuseniel told him he could rest his head on her shoulder and take a short nap. She would wake him as soon as she finished reading. Yuseniel was such a warm Kama and so sweet, he wanted this moment to last forever. He really wanted her to love him too. He wanted to be with her forever. Tess didn't know what to do with him, because she only liked dark-eyed brunettes. He wasn't the type she needed. Tess is becoming increasingly worried about this, and he wonders what will happen if she falls in love with someone. Yuseniel is always surrounded by attractive young men, so perhaps she might choose one of them, and then he will be left alone. When a person becomes unnecessary, people simply erase them from their lives. Such are the rules of this cruel world. The boy remembered the Empress telling her husband that she would like to give the populated prince a younger brother. If he wanted to stay with Yuseniel, he would have to win her heart. But he doesn't understand how to do this, because he can't change his appearance at will. It would be easier if she were as mercantile and greedy as the others. At least then she could be attracted by wealth and power. At that moment, his greatest fear was being abandoned. It hadn't bothered him before, because he was already lonely. But now that Yuseniel is in his life, he can no longer refuse her sweetness. So the boy decided he needed to find a way to change his appearance. He would give anything for it, and when he was about to lose his mind, he appeared. The voice asked if he wanted to get her. If so, then he could help him. He simply had to let him into his mind and soul. He seemed strange to him, but at the same time, very familiar. Tess asked him who he was. This caused conflicting feelings. He is a deity that people have forgotten. If the boy makes a deal with him, he will fulfill any of his wishes, no matter whether he wants to conquer the entire continent or bathe in gold and precious stones. He could even make Yuseniel love him, the boy thought. But then he realized that he couldn't do that. She wouldn't like it. And besides, he wasn't sure if he could be trusted. The voice asked him if he knew whether he was worthy of his trust. He seems to be able to read minds. God considered him a foolish child and said he would give him a gift and leave him for a while. He bets that the boy will soon be very eager to meet him again. After that day, he began to grow rapidly, but the anxiety did not go away. And a series of events only confirmed his fears. He decided that this freak would simply take Yuseniel away from him. He even had black hair. It seemed that this meant that she would prefer him. The boy decided that this would not happen. Tess would never agree to this. The deity came to him again and said that if they made a deal, he would take care of everything. So the crown prince agreed. The deity decided to tell him a story about the lies that more than one generation of his ancestors grew up on. The god with whom the founder of the Northern Empire made a contract only pretended to be a deity. In fact, he was a devil. However, the first emperor guessed about this, but this did not stop him from concluding the fatal deal. As a result, he received an unlimited supply of mana and access to all the knowledge of the world. This allowed him to put an end to the troubled times and found a new state, and everyone already knows what happened next. He asked the boy what he thought the devil demanded of the emperor in exchange for his services. He set a surprisingly simple condition. He simply wished to mix his own blood with the emperor's. That's all. From that moment on, his blood flowed in every air of the empire. This is the devil's blood. However, the demonic essence brought them all together, devoured them from the inside, and in the end, the sad fate of disappearing into the darkness awaited them all. Although time had diluted the bad blood and significantly weakened the influence of evil forces, very soon its concentration increased again, as new emperors made new deals. That's why two of them were known as madmen and tyrants. During periods of correction, the number of demons in the empire's domains increased exponentially. God was not pleased with this, and so he gave earthly man a blessing and strength to fight the Prince of Darkness and his minions. This man later founded the Southern Empire. Darkness in the north and light in the south fought each other day and night, maintaining the balance of the world. All he needs to do is ascend to the throne and tip the scales in their favor. If necessary, he can get rid of anyone who dares to interfere with him. I must spare no one. Yuseniel and her parents were exiled from the capital because of him. She wrote him a letter saying that their family was forced to leave the capital in a hurry, and she heard that right after his birthday, he became very ill, so she asks him to take care of himself. She didn't understand why they had to leave, but she thinks it had something to do with him, but he himself had nothing to do with it. This wasn't what Tess wanted, so he started crying for his friend. He felt very sorry, and the deity said that he had to become stronger to get what he wanted. And if they merge into one, it will give him as much power as he wishes. Tess said that if he had only known that he would have to wait so long to meet her, he would never have made the deal. Yuseniel asked him again what he said, because she hadn't heard him, because the music was too loud. The gentleman said that nothing like that happened, and added that he simply missed her very much. He missed his precious Yuseniel terribly. She asked him to stop, because he's too close. There are too many people around, but they're so enchanted by the falling petals that they don't care at all. Yuseniel said that he forgot about her parents, because his mother put up a magical barrier. Tess said he hadn't thought about them. She asked him to move away a little in that case. Incidentally, he never gave her a direct answer to her question about what exactly he meant when he said he gave her his heart. The words seemed to remain a mystery, while Yuseniel couldn't understand the meaning behind them. Tess replied that he meant exactly what he said, but his words did not reassure Yuseniel, as she still did not understand what lay behind this revelation. And if he had already come such a long way to get to Valen, then it was completely incomprehensible to her why he had not decided to give her his heart personally, leaving no doubt. Yuseniel noticed that he kept repeating how much he missed her, but his words were vastly at odds with his actions. Tess, it seemed to her, was only trying to avoid her getting hurt. During her absence, there had been several attempts to kill Tess, and now Yuseniel decided that she needed to clarify what he was talking about and what had actually happened during all this time. Tess explained that she had probably already heard that they had tried to frame him when his appearance had changed dramatically, and that this had led to several unsuccessful attempts on his life. From the moment his younger brother was born, many began to wish for his death, as no one wanted him to inherit the throne. The opposition within the court became increasingly pronounced. He remembered how he'd once almost escaped death when he was a year old. His mother had conspired with the Duke, the head of an aristocratic confederation, and they'd sent cutthroats after him. Yuseniel was shocked to learn that Tess had miraculously survived. His experiences had been so intense that he now feared for his life and felt he needed to become stronger to protect not only himself, but also those he cared about. Therefore, he firmly decided to become stronger, delved deeper into the study of magic, began to train more, and even began to take politics seriously, realizing that in order to protect, one must be prepared for anything. Unfortunately, however, soon afterward, his father became seriously ill and died shortly thereafter. This forced Tess to take on the responsibility and fill his shoes. The nobles continued their intrigues right up until Tess's coronation, spreading vile rumors about his family and opposing their return to the capital. Had Tess not exposed these traitors, his life would have been in grave danger. If he failed, his family would never be able to return home. Tess realized that only strong leadership could ensure his family's safety and future. Now Yuseniel began to understand why he had executed all the conspirators and abolished the aristocratic confederation. It was necessary to eliminate the threat. Tess added that the conspirators weren't just trying to destroy his power, they were aiming for his death. It was a true coup, and he was prepared to fight to the end. He apologized again for leaving Valen without a word. He explained that he simply didn't know what was best to do, and didn't want to worry her. But he missed her so much that he decided to leave his heart to her, not hoping for an answer, but fearing that she would hate him for it. Yuseniel replied that wasn't true. Her curiosity was the driving force, and she simply wanted to understand what was behind his changes. It wasn't driven by mistrust or judgment. If the question hurt him, she promised not to ask again. However, Tess said he would be happy to answer all her questions if she wanted. Suddenly, a divine voice spoke from behind him, claiming that Tess's words were false and that he was a liar. This caught Yuseniel's attention. The deity declared that Tess, despite all his worries, was in fact deceiving her. He had become much stronger and was no longer the vulnerable man who once needed saving. This all happened thanks to the intervention of a deity, which helped him attain incredible power. Yuseniel couldn't understand why Tess suddenly froze, as if something had changed in his mood. Tess apologized for his words, and the deity continued mockingly, claiming that here she was, his precious Yuseniel, right in front of him, and she was too good for him to lose. The deity continued to say that if Tess continued to do her thing, he would lose her again, just as he had lost her once. Yuseniel, noticing that Tess had turned pale, asked worriedly if he was all right. He looked clearly out of sorts, which made her worry about his condition. The deity's voice continued to insist that Tess hurry and retrieve her before it was too late. This only increased Yuseniel's anxiety. Tess shouted that he'd had enough, and Yuseniel, frightened, said he'd scared her. He suddenly broke into a scream, not understanding why he was acting this way. He apologized and said that his head hurt, but the musicians, not understanding what was happening, decided that he should stop the music, believing that this was his request. The lady noticed that Tess looked unwell and suggested taking his temperature to see if there was cause for concern. Yuseniel sensed he had a fever and asked if he was completely okay. He looked tired and weak, as if he lacked energy. The voice kept repeating that Tess should take her and possess her, which made Yuseniel even more worried. Yuseniel continued to complain that Tess was acting strange, but he reassured her that he was fine. However, his condition increasingly resembled extreme exhaustion. Tess reported that his headache was not going away and decided it was best to leave before his condition worsened further. Yuseniel tried to stop him, but he had already turned and walked away, leaving her completely bewildered. He looked like he wasn't himself. Her father approached, alarmed, and asked what was wrong, as he had heard her scream. Yusiniel explained that Tess had become ill, and she didn't know what was happening to him. She admitted that she had noticed strange behavior in him before, and now that he was gone, her anxiety only increased. She couldn't understand what was going on. Yusiniel tried to figure out what was wrong with him, while Tess continued to struggle with his serious condition. She was tormented by the thought that something serious was wrong with him. After the New Year's ball, the bustle finally died down, and a long-awaited moment of peace arrived, but many unanswered questions remained in her soul. Gail, noticing the change in her mood, asked her sister to look at the beautiful Mimlock tree to distract her from her thoughts, at least a little. Fruit picking turned out to be much more fun than she thought. It was just a shame that Valen didn't have such fruitful trees as here. Yusiniel savored every moment, remembering her home. The fruit was not only beautiful, but also incredibly delicious. Yusiniel warned her not to eat too much, otherwise she risked ruining her appetite and not having time to enjoy the main course. Once upon a time, this tree was so small that even a cat could barely reach its branches. Now it had already produced a full harvest, and they happily gathered the fruit, watching everything around them grow. Time flew by. Gael noticed that she worked too much, and didn't notice how quickly the days passed. It seemed that was why she stopped finding time for simple pleasures. The New Year's Eve ball was long gone, but Yusiniel still had worries. They grew more numerous with each passing day. Even the time to play with her sister had almost disappeared, which upset them both. But recently, Gail had started coming home earlier. Research in the lab was progressing well, and there was no longer a need to stay late into the night, which of course pleased Yusiniel. Gail said she'd soon be entering Conceum, which meant they'd be able to see each other much more often. This was encouraging, as her sister had been looking forward to the time when they'd be together. Yusiniel figured the academy and the lab were quite far apart, and she wasn't sure how often they would cross paths. But she didn't want to upset her sister, and decided to remain silent. Gail was so glad she wouldn't have to be alone in the house anymore. This brought Yusiniel relief. She finally felt like her life would be a little less lonely. The girl eagerly awaited the start of the school year, when life would once again sparkle with new colors. This was something important to her, and she was ready for new challenges, because change is always exciting. Gail said she wanted to take a fruit basket to her mom and dad. This decision surprised her greatly, as she hadn't shown much interest in household chores lately, focusing all her attention on herself. Gael had always been bright and cheerful, but her words now worried Yusiniel. Things seemed off, as Gael had been finding herself alone a lot lately, and this was clearly not the norm. Yes, Gail often sat alone with her parents, as they were so overprotective of Yusiniel. All their attention was focused on her, and Gail seemed forgotten. Maybe she should talk to them? Yusiniel felt it was time to bring this to her parents' attention. As Gail was entering adolescence, she could have become more independent, but her overprotectiveness was seriously hindering her. Yusiniel felt as if she'd only been born yesterday, and now her sister was already entering the academy. It was incredible how quickly time flies, and what could happen in such a short time. She felt full, as if she hadn't even had time to process what had happened, and now new Mimlocks had already grown on this tree. It was a reminder of how quickly life passes. Even when you don't notice, time moved, and Yusiniel couldn't help but notice how everything around her was changing. It was as if she were standing in one place, while the world around her continued to move endlessly, as if she couldn't follow it. Another year passed, but the questions didn't become less pressing. Yusiniel wondered how much time had passed in her world, and how her mother and father were feeling with her so far away. She kept thinking about her future, about the nightmares that tormented her, and the questions that remained unanswered. Would she be able to return home, or would that thought forever remain just a dream? And then she realized she was losing it again. Her thoughts had wandered, and she decided she needed to focus on something more important and tangible to keep herself in check. Yusiniel remembered that she wanted to treat Tess to some of their fruits, and at the same time to visit him, because she hadn't heard from him for months. Meanwhile, Tess lay there, feeling very ill and in pain. He simply begged her to come quickly. The Duke informed His Majesty that suspicious activity had been noticed near the southern borders. He heard that the neighboring empire was amassing troops there, and therefore they should begin preparing for an emergency. Suddenly, a man from behind turned to Duke Hardland and asked if it had occurred to him, when he was compiling this report, that it would be a good idea to include some solid evidence to go along with such a serious statement. It was Duke Rantia. Duke Ridzel believed that his lordship was not afraid of the possible consequences, because his daughter had been honored to dance with the emperor. Duke Bonaparte was simply horrified and couldn't understand what they were even allowing themselves to do. Milan said everything was fine. Rantia turned to Bonaparte and noted that he was always trying to pick a fight with someone, and perhaps it would be better for him to mind his own business. Although Duke Rantia and Duke Ridzel hold the same social status, they hate their family because they support the emperor. They are said to have been the ones who fought harder than anyone else for their expulsion 14 years ago. They went quiet for a while, but then bared their fangs again after the ill-fated New Year's ball. The emperor ordered everyone to remain silent, then turned to the ducal Hardland and inquired how often the knights of the southern empire hung around their borders. Lately they have been seen there more and more often, but it cannot be said that this happens with enviable regularity. Bonaparte thought they might be hunting demons. This is unlikely, as we're talking about an army that reports directly to the emperor. And this is also true. The personal detachment of the ruler of the state has completely different tasks. This army has only one purpose. It exists to maintain peace on the continent. They conduct training on their boundaries to keep him on a short leash. The emperor thought this was foolish. The deity asked if he was simply going to sit back and wait for them to attack. The emperor considered destroying them all, as he had more than enough power to do so. The thought haunted him, but he restrained himself. While the threat of war with the Southern Empire may be minimal, there's another problem. The borderlands are teeming with demons. Constantly being on guard has become routine for him. Over the past 10 years, the demons had become far more brutal than before. The emperor sighed deeply, feeling the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders. The duke's gaze, reminiscent of Eusennial, evoked painful memories. However, Tespaloon knew he had no right to lose control. If he gave in to his bloodlust, the devil would be able to take over his mind and soul. He couldn't allow that, especially now that Eusennial had returned. With her return to the capital, the risk of losing control became unacceptable. The emperor understood that her safety depended on his ability to maintain composure. Tespaloon sighed and, looking at the assembled group, said, "This damn meeting has been going on forever." He was barely containing his irritation. Turning to Albert, the emperor asked how Eusennial was faring. For some reason, this information always worried him more than anything else. Albert reported that the lady regularly practiced swordsmanship and sparred with Lord Ethel every week. This news immediately sparked a burst of anger in Tessa. However, he ordered Albert to continue. The latter added that Lady Eusennial had recently been invited to a soirée at the Rantia estate, which would take place in 10 days. Albert noted that the lady did not yet have a companion, but most likely she would go to the event with Lord Nuss, or with Lord Ethel, whom Tessa hated. Tess had hated Ethel since childhood. The tall, dark-haired man, a talented swordsman, and a potential rival for Eusennial's affections. All of this infuriated him. Recalling the past, the emperor thought about how he had put in a good word for Etil with his father, so that he would accept him into the guard. Even the intercepted letters that Etil sent to Eusennial during her exile could not sever his connection with the girl. The kind-hearted Eusennial, unable to refuse these suitors, became the target of their advances. The emperor knew he had to intervene. He thought irritably that it was his job to rid her of her persistent suitors. Apparently, the situation wouldn't change without his intervention. Albert soon reported that Eusennial had submitted a request for an audience and was going to visit the emperor this afternoon. Tess asked why it had become known so late. It turned out the letter had arrived yesterday, but he hadn't been in a good condition to read it in time. Yesterday, he ordered that no one disturb him, unless they wanted to lose their heads. Emotions got the better of him, and he lost control of his powers. Now, having heard the news of her visit, he ordered everything to be prepared for her arrival, wanting to make the proper impression on her. Albert assured her that everything would be done, but as he was about to leave, he was stopped by Tess, who suddenly wanted to clarify the details. The emperor asked what he looked like, and Albert, not understanding what his master meant, sheepishly asked for forgiveness. It turned out that Tess had planned to appear before Eusennial as a sick and weak person in order to understand her true feelings. Eusennial, who had deliberately arrived at an inconspicuous time, brought the emperor a basket of fruit so as not to attract anyone's attention. She was surprised that half the palace greeted her as if it were an important visit. She was even more perplexed by the number of servants en route to her destination. When she was offered to accompany her, Eusennial, knowing the way to his office, refused the services of servants, considering it unnecessary. However, Albert reported that the emperor was not in the office, as he was resting in his chambers due to illness. Eusennial was concerned to hear about his condition. Albert, noticing her anxiety, hastened to reassure her that nothing serious had happened. Eusennial asked him to accept her apology. She always worries when someone is ill. Now Albert understood why the emperor had decided to feign illness. The lord said he would bring her to him immediately. Eusennial noticed that he had turned completely pale, so she assumed he was very ill. It seemed his majesty had fallen asleep. He asked the lady to wait a little. Now he would leave them. The lady couldn't understand why he was sweating so profusely. If Albert's memory served him correctly, it was this very girl's name that his majesty had been repeating in his delirium. He thought she'd have a pretty hard time with him. Eusennial tried to wake Tess, after which the emperor grabbed her and dragged her to him. Eusennial didn't understand what it was. Tess said he was ticklish. The girl had no idea what he was doing. Eusennial was only 6 years old when she first met Tess. While she was much older at heart, he was still just a boy. And so, no matter what he did, she continued to see him as a child. But now, looking at his damp hair and clearly defined muscles, she understands that he is no longer a child. She needed to get off him before he woke up. Eusennial asked him to stop, not understanding why he was pulling her down. Eusennial was confused, because everything was the same as before. He was driving her crazy, but she still took him. Eusennial asked him not to press against her. His wet hair brushed against her bare skin. This was a very unusual sensation. Eusennial tried to pull herself together and push these thoughts away. It was time for her to get out of here, but in her sleep, the emperor asked her not to leave. Eusenio was overjoyed because he had finally deigned to wake up, so she asked him to let her go, but he also lay down on top of her. Eusenio asked him to stop and remarked that she felt like something like this had happened before. The girl decided she'd definitely blame him as soon as she opened her eyes. Incidentally, she hadn't noticed how strong he was. The girl couldn't help but move him a millimeter. It's even a little scary, by the way. His hands have also changed dramatically. When she returned to the capital, even the air between them became somehow different. For a long time, the image of little Tessa categorically did not want to disappear from her head. But now he was a grown man. She suddenly realized she'd never had a boyfriend. What can I say? She was so shy that she didn't even discuss other people's relationships with anyone. Eusenio thought that such close physical contact would make her uncomfortable, but she found that feeling the beating of something's heart was quite pleasant. It's calming. You can fall asleep like that, but she should not do that under any circumstances. If she spends another night here, her peaceful life will be over. Everyone will write that she spent the night in the imperial bedchamber. This confirms the rumors that she has been romantically involved with His Majesty since her youth. Her parents will be in despair, her father will faint, and her mother will give her a terrible blow. Therefore, she must not give in to a momentary impulse. She asked him to get up, because she couldn't just throw him out of bed. After all, it would be indecent. She was either in front of her or with her, wondering what she should do. Give in to her desires and stay in the palace, or push the insolent man off her back and go home. The gentleman casually remarked that he would prefer the first option, as he was unbearably bored without her. He said this with a slight smile, calling her hard-hearted. Then, as if to confirm his words, he tenderly kissed her hand. The gesture was both touching and insistent, making her feel a little uneasy. Eusenio tried to maintain her composure, but her irritation still broke through. She asked what in her actions he considered cruel, since she tolerated his antics. The emperor, with feigned surprise, reminded her that he was, after all, the ruler of the empire, and added that her tolerance towards him might even be excessive. Eusenio sighed and retorted that he should be grateful to still be alive after his bear hug, because even after that, he continued to be indignant. Tess merely smirked at this and asked how she would rate his hugs. The question was so mocking that Eusenio felt a slight irritation. Not wanting to continue this conversation, the girl threw the blanket over him, telling him to button up, but Tess took her words as impolite, since he was trying so hard for her. He pursed his lips and noted with resentment that her coldness might have hurt, if not for his iron patience. However, the girl paid no attention. Eusenio sternly asked him to stop walking around half-dressed, lest he catch a cold, but Tess realized his plan had worked as intended. He, noticing the blush on her face, wondered how she would react if he admitted that he dreamed of leaving a mark on her delicate neck. He had to remind himself to be patient. He believed that one day she would open her heart to him, and he would be able to completely possess her soul. Then, he thought, she would belong only to him. But now his attention was riveted on the mimlocks the girl had brought with her. Eusenio confirmed the fruit was meant for him. Tess smiled, noting that he'd momentarily doubted her intentions. He thought she was so cold and distant, but yet she was the one who always came to him when he needed support. Eusenio, in turn, assumed his behavior was due to resentment towards her, but Tess couldn't understand where she got such thoughts from. The girl just smiled and noted that as a child, he often threw tantrums if something didn't go his way, and now he behaves almost the same way. To end the conversation, she suddenly handed him a piece of fruit, and with a sharp movement put it into his mouth, causing the emperor to literally be taken aback. Slightly stunned, Tess didn't immediately realize it was fruit from her own garden. His surprise gave way to a touch of joy. Eusenio explained that the tree had borne fruit for the first time this year, and she wanted to share its joy with him. Her words sounded unexpectedly sincere. The emperor, approaching, asked if she had truly thought of him when she decided to treat him. The question was voiced with a slight hint of disbelief. Eusenio reminded him that it was he who had asked Sir Guard to care for this tree, and she simply thought it right to share the harvest. However, Tess noticed that her behavior had become surprisingly changeable. She would sometimes push him away, sometimes give him sweet moments like this. And although she avoids intimacy, he feels that there is an invisible connection between them that does not allow her to leave. He tried to get closer, but each time Eusenio seemed to slip away, leaving him with the feeling that she would forever remain a mystery. Despite her coldness, Tess felt that every moment spent with her made him become more and more attached to this girl, but she remained out of his reach, like sand slipping through his fingers. He felt himself falling into her power, and it was unusual. When Eusenio sharply asked why he was staring like that, the emperor only chuckled, realizing that she had no idea about his feelings. He feigned nonchalance when he asked her to feed him. However, Eusenio, frowning, said he was perfectly capable of handling it himself. Tess, as if mockingly, then offered to pick him up, and his serious tone made her freeze in surprise. She couldn't understand how he could say such things with such sincerity, and she barely suppressed an irritated laugh in response. The emperor admitted he felt lonely. While she was enjoying balls, he spent his days here, in this chamber, in isolation and melancholy. It hurt him that she seemed to forget about him, and he admitted that for this moment he was ready to endure any pain. Yuseniel couldn't understand what was making him so clingy, but she gave in and allowed him to stay by her side. Tess, comfortably settled on her lap, remarked with a satisfied smile that he was now happy because being next to her made him feel better. The girl looked at him reproachfully, remarking that it was strange to see the Emperor sitting on the floor. The sight seemed to violate all propriety. But Tess calmly explained that she refused to share the bed, and the difference in their heights made his position even more uncomfortable. As if by chance, he again suggested moving to the bed, but Yuseniel categorically rejected this idea, almost blushing with embarrassment. The Emperor, looking into her eyes, suddenly asked how long she intended to pretend not to notice anything. The girl frowned, not understanding what was being discussed, and Tess, with a slight smile, told her mysteriously that if she wanted, he would kneel before her. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but his words took Yuseniel's breath away. She knew there was more behind the gesture. Tess added that simply being near her was enough for him, and as long as she didn't push him away, he felt completely happy. He admitted that these rare moments when they were alone made his world brighter, even if she considered it just a momentary weakness. Yuseniel reminded him that she only agreed to this because he was sick, and asked him not to jump to conclusions. Tess nodded, but his gaze told a different story. For him, this wasn't just a moment. He was certain their connection ran deeper. The girl knew that her position did not bode well, but every time she looked at him, she felt something new being born inside her. She convinced herself that this was just a temporary phenomenon, but every day she noticed that the thought about it was becoming more and more obsessive. Yuseniel was afraid that if she gave in to these feelings, she would become captive to their power, and would never be able to escape this turbulent cycle. She was determined to keep her composure while her research progressed, and her dreams of returning became a reality. Recurring nightmares of her death reminded her that she was only a guest in this world, a guest who would one day have to leave, lest it upset its balance. Waking up once again from a disturbing dream, she was strengthened in her resolve to stay away from strong attachments. She couldn't allow her disappearance to cause anyone pain, and Yuseniel herself understood that leaving would then be unbearable. Her resolve to remain calm and detached could not be shaken even by Tess's presence, although sometimes she doubted whether she was strong enough. Having said goodbye to the Emperor, she wished him good night and left his chambers, trying not to look back. The next day, Yuseniel encountered an unexpected scene. She heard loud voices coming from around the corner, and rushed to investigate. Before her stood the Marquis's daughter, Lily, and Gale Hardland, who were clearly in the midst of a heated argument. Lily, flushed with anger, shouted that Gale should sit in her corner and keep her head down, as if she had no right to attention. Gale tried to justify herself, but Lily wouldn't let her get a word in edgewise, insisting that her existence was only an inconvenience to those around her. Yuseniel frowned, came closer, and in a cold tone demanded to know what was going on here. Today, Yuseniel finally found a moment to open a long-awaited letter from Nuss. It had been languishing among other tasks for a long time, and she had almost forgotten about it. The bustle and endless worries of the past few days had completely consumed her life, pushing personal matters into the background. However, upon reading the first lines, she felt a strange uneasiness. Why had this letter arrived at precisely this moment, when time was so desperately short? Why now? Perhaps it would have been a good idea to call Etiel for help, but Yuseniel immediately doubted that decision. Etiel was so busy that he even cancelled his last training session, something he'd never done before. He'd said it was urgent, he'd been summoned to the palace, and refusal was impossible, but Yuseniel sensed there was more behind those words. He was clearly nervous, and she couldn't help but notice. If they were to try to involve him in solving the problem, Ethel would most likely ask Oren for help. It would be a logical step, but something about it also felt wrong. Yuseniel noticed a strange coincidence. Noose had suddenly been sent on a business trip, and Etiel was overloaded with work. It was as if someone had deliberately isolated her from them. She briefly considered that Tess might be behind this, but she quickly dismissed the thought. He wasn't the kind of man to abuse his power out of jealousy, or could he? After their dance at the New Year's ball, Yuseniel became the object of intense attention from the aristocracy. Now her every move was discussed, and inviting someone to the evening became a real dilemma. She thought irritably, why should she even bother? Perhaps she was simply exaggerating the situation, attaching too much importance to it. But after her last meeting with Tess, she vowed to keep her distance from any emotional upheaval. She had to remain cool and independent. After all, she could go to the party alone. Her family's reputation was strong enough not to be damaged by such a minor infraction. Moreover, she increasingly felt it was better to stay away from these evenings, intrigues, and gossip altogether. All of this only got in the way. Her decision to distance herself from high society began to bear fruit. She felt calmer and freer. However, at some point, Yuseniel realized that isolation had taken her too far. She began to be troubled by questions she had previously ignored. When she decided to discuss them with the professor, those around her were surprised. The lady now spent almost all her time in the lab, which was unusual for her position. Some even began whispering that her passion for research bordered on obsession. This didn't escape her notice, but she pretended not to care. Indeed, it seemed as if nothing but working on the project interested her anymore. Even communication with loved ones became a rarity. She had finally decided that she would not become attached to anyone. This was her firm decision, and she was confident that nothing would make her change her mind. But the moment her frightened sister appeared before her, Yusenyul suddenly felt how her own indifference became hateful to her. She addressed Gale sternly, demanding to know what had happened. Her silence and confusion seemed suspicious, and Yusenyul wanted to know the truth. The girl, with a gentle smile, assured that she was simply giving her sister some advice, adding that these were the usual instructions from an older student. Then she looked at those around her, as if seeking their support, and with feigned naivety, asked whether she was really to blame for this situation. Gale, to everyone's surprise, admitted her guilt. She bowed her head and calmly stated that she was the one who started this conflict. Yusenyul was shocked. She suggested that her sister return home, assuring her that everything was fine, and she had nothing to worry about. But a voice inside her whispered that Gale was frightened. The situation clearly went beyond the bounds of a simple conflict, and Yusenyul sensed it. A thought flashed through her mind. Her sister was stepping on the same rake again. Why was she so stubbornly ignoring her past mistakes? She reminded herself that she had promised not to interfere, but the words she heard struck a chord. This time, she couldn't remain silent. After Gale left, Yusenyul fell into thought. She had promised herself not to interfere, but she knew she wouldn't forgive herself if something happened. She walked her sister to the stagecoach, assuring her that everything would be fine, but her smile vanished. As soon as Gale left, her face turned serious. She remembered how Lily had repeatedly crossed boundaries, and she decided she wouldn't tolerate it. Lily tried to defend herself, claiming that she was just giving a few tips, but Yusenyul silently slapped her across the face, stopping the flow of excuses. This caused a storm of indignation. Lily called her an impudent girl and was furious that anyone would dare raise a hand to her. Yusenyul looked at her coldly, replying that next time she should choose her words more carefully, otherwise the consequences would be worse. She reminded him that without her intercession, Lily would have been imprisoned long ago. She was saved only by asking the emperor for clemency. Lily was stunned. She couldn't believe anyone dared remind her of this, but Yusenyul was adamant. After that, she turned around and walked away, leaving Lily with her thoughts and indignation, as if finally putting an end to their argument. She reminded him that if it weren't for her intervention, Lily would have rotted in prison long ago, and all thanks to the mercy she herself had asked the emperor for. Lily, furious, couldn't believe that anyone dared to remind her of that moment, but Yusenyul remained unperturbed and left. Earrings were shocked that Lady helped free Lily. The girl stood up and he shouted and asked what she was carrying. Yusenyul told her to watch her tongue, as she was furious right now. The Marquise's daughter didn't see why she cared, since she was Lady Xuan. It seems Yusenyul has already made it clear she won't tolerate this girl's vile yapping just because she's Orin's sister. She clearly has no intention of turning a blind eye to such behavior. Although the elf is naturally reluctant to display her full power, Yusenyul is willing to make an exception for her. This situation clearly requires a different approach. She hopes this girl understands that Yusenyul is leading her to a certain understanding of what's happening. She doesn't want to let her go so easily. She turns to the other girls standing nearby and asks for their names. The girls standing nearby did not know what to do in this situation and began to ask Lily how they should respond in this situation, what they should expect from what was happening. Despite their confusion, the girls introduced themselves. However, upon learning their names, the mistress asked them not to reveal the full truth about how everything had happened. Today, when the seniors were greeting the new students, Lady Ganyul was the first to greet Lily. It was completely unexpected, and Lily was slightly taken aback. Yusenyul wondered if this was really a serious issue. She couldn't fathom how serious a conflict could be over such a trivial matter. She asked if the girls wanted to say that the Marquis's daughter had almost torn the Duke's daughter to pieces just because of some pathetic greeting, which sounded absolutely ridiculous. Yusenyul noticed that the situation looked hopeless and grabbed the girl by the hem of her robe. She was ready to take decisive action, as the situation was clearly spiraling out of control. The Marquis's daughter cried out, demanding that Yusenyul remove her hands, as she would complain to her father. She was certain he would not let this incident go unpunished. She reminded that the future empress of this country stood before her, and she would not allow herself to be treated this way, demanding respect and recognition. The lady momentarily forgot about raising her daughter, as her father surrounded her with love and care, hoping that she would become a future empress and the main pride of their family. Perhaps it was for this very reason that her father, in desperation, begged her to rescue his daughter from such a precarious situation. Lily quietly asked if it was true, unable to believe it. The young man nevertheless agreed. Since he had no choice, he said that if she made even the slightest mistake, she would pay dearly for it. So to this day, she is alive and well solely because she managed to convince the emperor not to execute her, despite all her mistakes. Lily indignantly declared that this was all a lie, to which the lady replied that she was irritated not only by Lily's behavior, but also by her unfounded confidence that the emperor would ever marry her. She reminded Lily that the man she was clinging to so desperately had been hers long before Lily had even been born, so her attempts had been in vain. Lily couldn't understand how she could even speak like that, not realizing the gravity of the situation. Euseniel coldly declared that her life still depended on her. In other words, she could either beg Euseniel for forgiveness or say goodbye to her life and well-being. The choice was hers alone. After these words, the lady silently left the room, leaving Lily to ponder what she would do next. Everything was being decided too quickly, and she had no time to think. Gail was extremely worried, not knowing where her sister was and why she hadn't shown up for so long. She couldn't understand what could have happened and was on the verge of panic, unsure what to do. Gail didn't want to think about the possibility that something terrible could have happened and was very worried, afraid that these girls could cause her sister pain or suffering. One of the servants asked to calm the lady down, but she couldn't understand what would happen if her sister actually suffered because of these women. It was unbearable for her. Gail was afraid her parents would be very upset if something happened to Euseniel. Her anxiety grew, as she didn't know how it would all end. But suddenly, unexpectedly, her sister came up to her from behind and asked who would suffer, as if not understanding the whole situation and her experiences. Gail threw herself into her sister's arms, asking where she had been for so long, because she was so worried and could not understand why her sister had not appeared earlier. Euseniel thought she was stupid and didn't understand why she was so worried, because nothing terrible had happened, and it could have been lived through calmly. Gail asked Euseniel not to call her that, to which the lady apologized with a smile, promising not to use such words towards her anymore. She suggested that Gail not worry and return home with the servants. She would be safe and no one would harm her, so there was no need to worry. The little girl was upset because she didn't want to be left alone at the academy all night. She had hoped things would be different. Euseniel, noticing her sadness, said that she did not understand why it upset her so much, because the academy was a place where she could learn a lot. She recalled how Gail herself said that the capital was so beautiful and interesting, but now it seemed that she felt like an outsider and out of place here. She also recalled Gael saying that her parents were always busy and rarely home, and how she missed spending time with her sister. Their elven mother often doesn't understand human customs, and their father is always busy at work and returns home well after midnight, so Gail feels lonely. Because of this, Gail could only count on her older sister, who was the only person she could rely on. Euseniel reassured her, promising that she would visit home more often to spend more time with her sister and support her in difficult times. She promised that they would spend much more time together, and that would now become her priority, despite all her other concerns. Euseniel knew that someday she would have to leave this place, but for now her main goal was to ensure her sister's safety and peace of mind. She told Gail to go home and wait for her there. Euseniel needed to meet with several people urgently to take care of some important matters. The Emperor was delighted to see Euseniel, and it was a pleasant surprise for him, since he had not expected her visit at that moment. She finally arrived when he had just finished his business, and now they could talk about important matters. It was a good coincidence. He invited her into the drawing room, or perhaps the library. The mistress greeted him, and despite the formalities, Tess repeatedly said they could dispense with them. She had come a long way, and was ready to discuss important matters concerning her plans and future. This was necessary for further action. Euseniel said that she wanted to ask him for a favor, and hoped that the Emperor would help her in solving an important issue. She explained that there was an important dinner party at the Rantia estate this weekend, and she wanted the Emperor to be her companion at the event. To strengthen Gail's position in society, she asked him to help her just once, by supporting her at this important event. The fact that Lillian had mocked Daniel in front of me left her confused. The Marquise's youngest daughter firmly believes she will one day become Empress, so she can understand her impudence. But how her friends from the families of the minor, landed gentry dare to bully the young Duchess is completely incomprehensible. After some thought, she found the answer to this question. Children develop their own hierarchy. I know this very well. Parents organize something like a tea party for them, or take them with them to various social events. In this way, they help him strengthen his status, get comfortable among his peers, and even make friends with them. This has long been a kind of tradition, but since their family was in exile for a long time, they were unable to observe it. So, she asked him to be her companion. She would need the Emperor's help to make up for lost time as quickly as possible. They seemed to be listening intently to their conversation, and she thought they would let them be alone. But that wouldn't do. They definitely wouldn't be allowed to talk here, so she dragged the Emperor along with her. Euseniel suggested he look for a more secluded spot. Tess was simply shocked. He remembered when she was little, and noticed that she hadn't changed at all. They found a place where no one would find them. Euseniel couldn't believe she'd sunk so low, suddenly jumping up and running through the palace as if scalded, and she had no idea what she was thinking. She also apologized for not even letting the Emperor open his mouth. She also grabbed him by the hand, just like in childhood. He should let go before he thought of something unnecessary. Euseniel, I wanted others to eavesdrop because it concerned her sister. That's why she brought him here, and that's the only reason. Tess said he knew, so she decided to go back to where she started. But first, she asks him to just move away from her. Tess noted that she said that she wanted to use him, but he was not at all against it, and was even glad. Euseniel noted that he didn't even really understand what she asked for. Tess asked her to just say it again. The lady didn't quite understand what he meant. He wanted her to ask him to be her companion again. The lady was very embarrassed, and he asked her not to worry, as he always listened to her attentively. After that, he kissed her on the forehead. She once said that he wasn't allowed to kiss her on the lips without permission, or that was just what she wanted. The girl became frightened and asked him to move over. Tess noted that she probably wouldn't repeat it. Yuseniel asked him to be her companion and hoped he was now satisfied. God didn't say he was completely satisfied, but the girl didn't understand why he insisted on it so much. Tess pointed out that even if he explained, she still wouldn't understand. But every time he hears it, it feels like his dream has come true. But he needs to know if she really wants the Emperor himself to accompany her to social events, since he thought she disliked being the center of attention. The Lord said that something had happened, and then she told him everything that had happened. Yuseniel was afraid that he would get angry and make some rash decision, but she was struck by his calm. Tess remarked that she seemed to care about her little sister very much, even more than he could have imagined. When she shared how infuriated she was by the incident, he quickly drew the right conclusions. Yuseniel is worried that her sister will not be accepted in high society, and therefore wants to show everyone that her older sister is close enough to the Emperor to invite him to a dinner party as her partner. Yuseniel noted that he had indeed understood everything correctly, and she also asked him for forgiveness. She was terribly sorry she had to treat him like this, but Tess said she didn't need to apologize, because that was why he was so happy to inherit the throne. She knows that he is ready to fall on his knees before her, if she wishes it. Tess prays that she can use it as much as her heart desires. He will do everything for her, he is just waiting for an order from her. Yuseniel noticed that in this lighting, the eyes look darker than the night sky. They are so deep that you can easily drown in them. Just one fleeting glance from his impossible eyes seems like a passionate declaration of love. Tess asked her to kiss him. He was too obedient a boy and deserved a reward. For some reason, because of him, she immediately loses the ability to think clearly. If you think about it, she has never dated anyone before, and in her past life, her father abandoned her sick mother and went to his mistress, and she had to take care of her alone, so there was no time for her own relationship, and then she was killed altogether. It's not surprising that she developed extensive trust issues, but thanks to her current parents, she realized that true love exists. However, she was certain that she was not destined to experience these feelings. Therefore, she does not understand the reason for all this reasoning. She was completely unaccustomed to such situations, because then she kissed him. She asked him to wait, but the Emperor continued kissing her. Yuseniel knows that she reached out for a kiss, but what she should do now is completely unclear. Yuseniel decided this couldn't go on any longer. She needed to push him away quickly. Yuseniel asked him to wait, but the Emperor began to say that he liked her very much. So, there is no strength to restrain oneself, but there is no need to worry. He will not continue without her consent. This is a curse. She must stop it, and put a stop to this chaos immediately. He understands perfectly well what this is fraught with, but Tess still asked if she really didn't like the kiss. Because he likes it so much. When she looks into his eyes, it becomes so hot that her throat burns, and her thoughts literally evaporate. Even so, she still has to order him to stop, but her body is on fire and is moving towards him against her will. Yuseniel agreed to just this once. That evening, the main character came home and told her mother that she had reported a mistake. Seal reacted weakly, and the girl was surprised that this was all she would say, since she had no idea what exactly she had done. The mother thinks that everything is not so bad. Before this, she did very well in everything she took on, so she believes in her daughter. Yuseniel became convinced that her mother thought too highly of her, so she asked where her younger sister was. Gail is outside playing with the maids. She could call her, but she shouldn't, because the girl doesn't want her to hear this conversation. It's because of this that we're going to talk about her. Yuseniel accidentally witnessed other students bullying her, and he suspects that this has been going on since the day he was enrolled in the academy. The mother did not understand how this could happen. The girl asked her to listen to her calmly. After her story, Mother asked if everything she'd said was truly true. Yuseniel remarked that there was no need to worry, as she had immediately intervened and sorted everything out. It's her fault. She didn't give her daughter the attention she deserved, but the little girl always smiled and was in high spirits, and she couldn't imagine anyone was bullying her. It's completely unclear why she didn't tell her or her father about it. Yuseniel noted that this was because she and her father were completely focused on Yuseniel. She knew they were very worried, but there was no need for that. Ciel felt a little angry and couldn't understand how she could say that. Yuseniel added that the more attention they give her, the less attention Gail gets. Perhaps she and her father were worried because she constantly blamed herself for their expulsion and spent almost her entire childhood in the home library. But she's already an adult, so there's no need to worry about her so much. Ciel said that it wasn't just that. The reason she was going crazy with worry was because of her nightmares. It's hidden in that very prophecy. But she can't talk about it, so the lady fell silent. The girl asked what was wrong with her mother. Ciel just said that everything was fine, and she was right, so she would try to pay more attention to her sister. She will also definitely tell her father about everything, and then they will think together about how to solve this problem. Yuseniel was surprised, and then noted that, frankly speaking, she had already decided, but his mother would not like him. Yuseniel said that overall, she has everything under control, so there is nothing to worry about. Seal, you understand? She's at peace with that. Yuseniel, thank heavens, she didn't want to know the details. Mother said that she would always pay more attention to her and worry about her more than about others. So she asks the girl to be more careful. Yuseniel thought about how this was the first time her mother had so openly admitted that she was her favorite, and then she noticed that the door had not been opened before. After that unpleasant conversation with my mother, time flew by unnoticed, and the day of the ill-fated social event arrived. You will place the Duke. Tess said he turned her in because she was his precious Yuseniel. The lady greeted them. Her younger sister was simply shocked, as it was her first time seeing a carriage adorned with the imperial family's coat of arms and an escort of knights. Tess seemed to have prepared meticulously for this event. He was overjoyed to be Yuseniel's official companion. The gentleman noted that he should note that they had not seen each other since that day, so he asked if she had done what he had asked of her. Gale thought about it. She asked her sister what he was talking about. The emperor began to say that he was with her little sister, but his mistress began coughing rapidly and loudly. Gale didn't understand what was wrong with her, or whether she was okay. The emperor said they were simply discussing matters of state, and the girl had grasped everything immediately. Yuseniel was very confused, and remarked that she thought Gale had forgotten something. The girl remembered and greeted. She was very glad to meet, and introduced herself with her name. The emperor believed that she had probably rehearsed this greeting for a long time, and now she was a wife. What kind of a little sister was Yuseniel? The girl thought the rumors were probably true, and she and her sister really were very close. Lord, the bicycle legs asked again. Gale admitted that the young ladies at the academy were talking about nothing else. Yuseniel believed it was probably Lily's doing. The girl also apologized if she had made a mistake. The emperor noted that at least the girl hadn't lied about something. Tess said it was all true, and that she and her little sister were quite close, so he'd prepared a small gift for her. This knight will accompany her tonight. The man bowed and said he would be honored to serve her. Gael was overjoyed, and immediately began talking to him. Yuseniel was surprised that he even assigned her security. She asked me if he thought it was too much, since they were not members of the imperial family. Tess thought it didn't matter, and if it did, she might as well enter it as a bride. Yuseniel began to deny it, and he pointed out that it was she who stole his innocence. After all, she herself had agreed to it, but the lady asked him to remain silent and covered his mouth. She was very embarrassed. Yuseniel told them she'd only kissed him, and he should call a spade, otherwise people would misunderstand. Besides, they'd agreed to forget about it. He promised her this, and so, after that intoxicating kiss, they decided to pretend nothing had happened. Yuseniel believed that she had become mentally unstable due to the stress she had experienced. She asked him to consider it payment for the service. Of course, not the only thing he would get, but her body moved on its own. Yuseniel understood that he would never let this phrase pass by. Listen! So she did not understand what she was thinking about then. She decided to screw it on, and her head was already spinning. If she started to worry about it even more, she would completely burst. The gentleman agreed, but in exchange, he wants her to think about why she was attracted to him. She doesn't have to rush into an answer. After all, the emperor knows how to wait. Yuseniel repeated these words and asked if he remembered, but she was still grateful for his concern. It had been a long time since she'd seen Gale look so happy. Since she had obviously been out of sorts lately, she was afraid that she might have overheard her conversation with her mother. But perhaps she was imagining things too much. When they arrived, the girl was simply delighted, because the Duke's estate was simply magnificent. Yuseniel asked her not to run away, because she had told her this back in the carriage. Gale noted that she said that although she and the emperor had known each other since childhood, and communicated freely, she should not forget her manners. Yuseniel asked where she was going in such a hurry. Tess remarked that she was being overly affectionate with her sister. It was her first time out after all, and naturally, she was nervous. Her personal guard will be following her around all evening, so there is nothing to worry about. So instead, she can pay a little more attention to him, because he is her partner after all. Gale agreed with him and said she'd be fine. The lady said she saw they were getting along. They hadn't even gotten to the point of annoyance, and she was already tired. Yuseniel was shocked that he even asked, because he had tired her out with his presence, and she had been listening to them the whole way. Gale said her sister was the sweetest, smartest, kindest, and strongest girl in the world. He agreed, saying she might seem cold at times, but that gave her a special charm. Gale said that they decorated the entrance very beautifully. It was simply a sight to behold. The emperor remarked that it still couldn't compare to the opulent decoration of the imperial palace. The hallway was decorated with diamond and gold statues. Tess said that if she wanted to see it, she could come to him, but she had to take her sister with her. Gale promised to visit him tomorrow. Yuseniel wouldn't agree. They were at odds. Gale really wanted this, so she started looking at her sister with a pitiful face, so she agreed. Yuseniel said she would make time for the week, provided that she was polite to everyone today and made friends with someone. Since this is not an official reception, I will not have any difficulties. And besides, His Majesty is with them. Gale asked if she thought Lady Lillian would come. Yuseniel said she doubted she'd have the courage to show up here with a swollen cheek. She'll most likely be left alone at home. The girl asked why the emperor was laughing. Tess asked permission to give her advice. She shouldn't cut the weeds, otherwise she would never get rid of them. They need to be pulled out by the roots before they scatter all over the garden. Yuseniel asked what he was getting at, since I had to get so close to her. She asked him to confess, because she thought he was making something up. Tess remarked that she would soon see for herself. Lily was at the reception after all. She introduced herself to the emperor. It was supposed to be a modest celebration, similar to those she had attended up until now. In other words, it was supposed to be an ordinary dinner party, arranged so that nobles could introduce their offspring into society and help them settle into high society. Everyone immediately began greeting the Duchess and His Highness in her company. The lady thought that all the guests were probably confused and feeling awkward. Tess said she was here today solely as lady's partner, so they could all hold their heads up. Yuseniel thought that there would be a regular dinner here, and she doesn't understand why there are so many people here. Even the heads of noble families are present. It looks more like a royal reception. She assumed it was the emperor's doing, since she'd asked not to shock the public. Tess insisted that wasn't the case. He only mentioned in passing that he was going to attend this social event. It was at a meeting, and then everyone heard that the emperor was going to go there with his partner. Tess said he was just thinking out loud, and they were happy to try. It wasn't his fault, but now he realized what he had done. Yuseniel sighed and remarked that it was good that he hadn't announced it to everyone. The ladies approached Gale and introduced her daughter, and the girl was very happy to meet them all. She was very happy to communicate with new friends, many of whom were older than her. Not only girls but also boys met her, so her older sister was very happy about this. Yuseniel noted that it seemed like she had finally found friends and was feeling more comfortable. Everyone was being open and friendly, and she beamed with joy again. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, and that was such a relief. The emperor thought she was pleased, so he offered to play with him because he was really bored right now.